At my daughter's launch party, her boyfriend Tyler stood on stage and projected a bank statement onto the massive screen behind him. Pointing a manicured finger at me, he announced to 200 investors that I had embezzled $90,000 from the company's seed fund. He looked at me with fake pity and said, "Roland is confused. He is old and he is stealing from his own daughter to fund a gambling addiction." The room went silent. Everyone looked at me with disgust, seeing only a senile old man in a cheap suit. I did not scream. I did not cry. I simply pulled out my phone and read a case number out loud. 30 seconds later, the FBI kicked open the double doors. But just as they slapped the cuffs on him, Tyler laughed and yelled, "Check the digital signature, Kendra." It was him. My daughter looked at the screen and her face went pale. The signature on the transfer was mine. Before I tell you how a 68-year-old man took down a con artist, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever had to let someone destroy themselves just to prove a point. My name is Roland Mercer. I am 68 years old, and for 40 years I made my living in silence. To my neighbors in Southside Chicago, I was just a quiet man who mowed his lawn on Saturdays and drove a 10-year-old Ford sedan. To my daughter Kendra, I was a retired bookkeeper who helped small businesses with their taxes. She saw my frayed cuffs and my scuffed shoes, and she assumed I was struggling. She assumed I was obsolete. I never corrected her. I never told her that for 2 decades I was a senior forensic accountant for the IRS. I never told her that I specialized in dismantling corporate fraud rings or that I have put away men who thought they were untouchable. I never told her because in my line of work, silence is not just a habit, it is a survival mechanism. Kendra is brilliant. She built K-Tech from a laptop in her bedroom into a software company valued at $5 million. She has my brain for numbers, but she has her mother's heart. She trusts too easily. And that is how Tyler Prescott walked into our lives. Tyler was 35 years old, white handsome in that polished, generic way, and claimed to be an angel investor from Silicon Valley. He drove a leased Porsche, wore Italian suits that cost more than my car, and spoke in buzzwords that made young entrepreneurs swoon. He swept Kendra off her feet 6 months ago. He promised to take K-Tech global. He promised to take care of her, but I saw what she did not. I saw the way he never paid for dinner with a card, always cash. I saw the way his eyes scanned a room not for friends but for exits and marks. I saw a predator. Last Friday was the biggest night of Kendra's life. It was the official launch of her new cybersecurity software. The venue was a converted warehouse in downtown Chicago, exposed brick crystal chandeliers and champagne that cost $20 a glass. The room was filled with investors, tech journalists, and industry leaders. I stood in the back holding a glass of sparkling water, wearing my best suit, which was 15 years out of style. I felt invisible. That is exactly how I like it. Tyler was center stage holding court. He had his arm around Kendra, playing the supportive partner perfectly. He looked at the crowd and tapped the microphone. The sound system whined and the room quieted down. "Thank you all for coming," Tyler said, his voice smooth as silk. "Tonight is a celebration of Kendra's genius. We have built something incredible here. K-Tech is the future." The crowd applauded. Kendra beamed, looking at him with total adoration. It broke my heart because I knew what was coming. I had been tracking the company accounts. I knew the discrepancies. I just did not know he was going to make his move so publicly. Tyler held up a hand for silence. His face shifted. The smile vanished, replaced by a look of heavy sorrow. He looked like an actor practicing for an award. However, he said, his voice dropping an octave, "We value transparency at K-Tech. And before we move forward, we have to address a painful internal issue. A security breach." He clicked a remote in his hand. The screen behind him, which had been displaying the K-Tech logo, flickered and changed. It was now displaying a blown-up image of a bank transfer statement. The amount highlighted in red was $90,000. My heart did not race. My pulse did not jump. I simply set my water glass down on a high-top table and waited. "We discovered this morning that $90,000 was unauthorizedly transferred from our seed funding account to an offshore shell entity," Tyler continued. He paused for dramatic effect, letting the murmurs ripple through the crowd. "We investigated the IP address. We investigated the user logs. And it breaks my heart to say this." He turned and pointed a finger directly at me. The spotlight followed his finger, blinding me for a second. "Roland Mercer, Kendra's father, is responsible for this theft." The gasp from the room was audible. 200 heads turned. I saw the looks. They saw an old black man standing alone in an ill-fitting suit. They saw what Tyler wanted them to see. A leech, a failure, a criminal. Kendra stepped back, looking at Tyler in confusion. "Tyler, what are you doing?" she whispered, but the microphone picked it up. "I am protecting you, babe," Tyler said loud enough for the back row to hear. He looked at the audience with that fake sympathy. "You have to understand, Roland is nearly 70. We have noticed signs of decline recently. Confusion, paranoia. He has a gambling problem he tries to hide. We think he acted out of desperation and confusion. We tried to handle this privately, but the investors deserve to know that the leak has been identified and plugged. He was good. I had to give him that. He was using gaslighting on a corporate scale. He was painting me as a senile, incompetent old man so that anything I said in my defense would sound like the ramblings of a crazy person. He was stripping me of my dignity to cover his tracks. Security, Tyler barked. "Please escort Mr. Mercer out. We will deal with the legalities in the morning." 2 burly security guards started moving toward me. The crowd parted, making a wide path as if I were contagious. I saw Kendra standing on stage, her hand over her mouth, tears welling in her eyes. She looked at me not with anger, but with pity. She believed him. That hurt more than the accusation. She believed I was a thief because she could not imagine her Prince Charming was a monster. I did not move. I did not run. I stood my ground and reached into my inner jacket pocket. The security guards sped up, thinking I was reaching for a weapon. I pulled out my old flip phone. I ignored the guards. I ignored the whispers. I looked straight at Tyler, who was smirking down at me from the stage. "You made a mistake, Tyler," I said. My voice was not loud, but it carried. It was the voice I used when I testified in federal court. It was the voice of authority. Tyler laughed nervously. "Please, Dad, do not make this harder. Go get some rest." I opened the phone and dialed a single number on speed dial. I put the phone to my ear. "Agent Miller," I said calmly, never taking my eyes off Tyler. "Execute the warrant." Tyler frowned. "What are you talking about?" The doors at the back of the warehouse burst open with a crash that shook the floor. 10 agents in FBI windbreakers stormed in, weapons drawn. The crowd screamed and scattered. The security guards, who were inches from grabbing me, froze and backed away, hands raised. "Federal agents, everyone stay where you are," a voice boomed. Tyler looked around in panic. He tried to step behind Kendra, using her as a human shield, but she stepped away from him instinctively. Tyler Prescott, the lead agent, shouted, marching toward the stage. "You are under arrest for federal wire fraud, aggravated identity theft, and money laundering." I watched Tyler's face crumble. The arrogance evaporated, leaving only the rat-like fear of a cornered animal. He looked at the agents, then at me, then at Kendra. "This is a mistake," he stammered, his voice cracking. "This is a setup. That old man is crazy. He is calling in favors. He is lying." The agents did not care about his protests. They stormed the stage. One agent kicked Tyler's legs apart and slammed him against the podium. The sound of handcuffs ratcheting shut was the sweetest music I had heard in years. I walked slowly toward the stage. The crowd parted for me again, but this time with fear and respect. I walked up the stairs, my knees aching slightly, but my back straight. I stood over Tyler as the agents patted him down. "I am not confused, Tyler," I said, looking down at him. "And I am not senile. I am a forensic accountant. And I have been tracking your IP address for 3 weeks. You bought those fake servers in Estonia using the company credit card. You thought you were routing the traffic through a VPN, but you leaked your DNS requests. Amateur mistake." Tyler struggled against the cuffs, his face pressed against the wood of the stage. He looked up at me, and his eyes were full of pure venom. He realized he had underestimated the quiet old man in the corner, but then he smiled. It was a twisted, desperate smile. "You think you won, old man," he spat. "You think you are so smart." He twisted his head to look at Kendra, who was standing frozen nearby, shaking like a leaf. "Kendra, look at the transfer," Tyler screamed. "Look at the authorization. I did not sign it." He did. Kendra looked at him, then at me. "What?" "Check the tablet," Tyler yelled. "Check the digital signature on the $90,000 transfer. It is verified. It is Roland's biometric ID." He moved the money. Kendra grabbed the tablet that was controlling the presentation. Her hands were trembling so hard she almost dropped it. She swiped to the transaction details. She zoomed in on the authorization log. The room was silent again. The FBI agents paused, looking at the evidence. Kendra looked up at me. Her eyes were wide, filled with betrayal and confusion. "Dad," she whispered, holding up the screen. It was true. There on the screen, clear as day, was my digital signature, my biometric authorization. According to the bank records, I was the one who had moved the $90,000 out of the company account. Tyler laughed, a manic sound that echoed in the warehouse. "See," he shouted. "He framed me. He moved the money to make me look bad because he hates that I am white and I am successful. He is the thief. He is the racist. Arrest him." The lead agent looked at me, his brow furrowed. "Mr. Mercer, can you explain this?" I looked at the screen. I looked at my daughter. I saw the doubt creeping back into her eyes. I saw the seed of suspicion that Tyler had planted blooming instantly. "I did not steal that money, Kendra," I said calmly. "Then why is your signature on it?" she cried, her voice breaking. "Why, Dad?" Before I could answer, Tyler shouted again. "He has been planning this. He wants to ruin us. He wants to control you." The agent looked at me. "Sir, we are going to need you to come in for questioning as well." I looked at Tyler. He was being hauled away, but he was looking at me with triumph. He knew that even if he went down, he had dragged me down with him. He had successfully poisoned my daughter against me. I nodded to the agent. "I understand." As they led Tyler out one door and guided me toward another, I looked back at Kendra. She was sitting on the edge of the stage, her head in her hands, sobbing. She was alone. Her launch was ruined. Her boyfriend was a criminal, and her father was a suspect. I walked out into the cool Chicago night flanked by agents. I knew I had not stolen the money, but I also knew that Tyler had access to my laptop last week when he visited the house. He had stolen my digital key. He had set a trap within a trap. I sat in the back of the federal vehicle as the sirens wailed. This was not the victory I had planned. I had exposed the scammer, but I had lost my daughter. And now I had to prove that I was not the architect of my own family's destruction. The $90,000 was gone. And according to the digital trail, I was the one who took it. Tyler had played a dangerous game, but he had forgotten one thing. He was playing against a man who could make numbers talk, and I was about to make them scream. I sat in the interrogation room for 12 hours. The federal agents had nothing on me besides a digital signature that any halfway decent hacker could spoof, but they held me anyway. They grilled me about my finances, about my relationship with Kendra, about my gambling habits, which did not exist. I answered every question with the calm precision of a man who has spent his life testifying in court. I told them about the spoofed IP addresses. I told them about the remote access Trojan I had found on my laptop 3 days ago. They listened, but they did not release me until dawn. They did not have enough to charge me yet, but they had enough to ruin my reputation. When I finally walked out the heavy steel doors into the gray Chicago morning, I felt a cold pit in my stomach. I looked across the street and my heart sank. Kendra's SUV was parked at the curb. Tyler was leaning against the passenger door. He had been released hours before me. He saw me coming. He did not hide. He slumped his shoulders and put on a face of absolute devastation, looking like a war hero who had just survived a battle. He looked at Kendra, who was sitting in the driver's seat, and he pointed at me. I could not hear the words through the glass, but I could read his lips. He was spinning the narrative. He was telling her that I was a bitter old man. He was telling her that I hated him not because he was a crook, but because he was white and successful, and I was just a jealous father who could not let go. I walked toward the car, my knees stiff from the cold metal bench. Kendra stepped out. Her eyes were red and swollen. She held up a hand, stopping me 10 feet away. "Do not come any closer," she said. Her voice was cold. It was the voice of a stranger. "Kendra, listen to me," I started. "No, you listen," she screamed. "Tyler told me everything. He told me how you threatened him in the holding cell. He told me how you used your old IRS buddies to frame him. How could you, Dad? He is trying to help us. He is trying to build a future for me. And you are trying to destroy him because of your own prejudice. You are a sad, lonely old man who cannot stand to see a white man doing better than you ever did." Tyler stood behind her, mimicking a look of hurt, but his eyes were laughing. He had turned my own daughter into a weapon against me. He had used the oldest trick in the book, claiming victimhood to mask his villainy. I looked at Tyler. "You are good," I said. "You are very good. But a lie has a shelf life, Tyler. And yours is expiring." Tyler flinched as if I had hit him. He grabbed Kendra's arm. "See, babe, he is doing it again. He is threatening me." I do not feel safe, Kendra. I do not feel safe with him around. Get in the car, Tyler, Kendra said softly. She turned to me one last time. Do not come to the house, Dad. Do not come near us. She got in the car and drove away, leaving me standing on the sidewalk with nothing but the clothes on my back and a burning rage in my gut. I took a taxi to the house. It was a modest 2-story brick house in a quiet suburb, the kind of place where people waved to their neighbors and mowed their lawns on Sundays. I had bought it 5 years ago. I had paid cash. As the taxi turned onto my street, I saw it. My life was scattered across the front lawn. My suits, my books, my collection of jazz vinyls, my shoe boxes of tax records. It looked like a yard sale from hell. It was the ultimate humiliation designed to show the whole neighborhood that Roland Mercer was no longer the man of the house. Kendra and Tyler were standing on the porch. Tyler was holding a garbage bag. He threw it onto the pile as I stepped out of the taxi. I told you not to come here, Kendra shouted. This is my house, Kendra, I said, my voice steady. I walked up the driveway, stepping over my favorite winter coat, which was lying in a puddle of mud. You cannot throw me out of my own home. Kendra laughed. It was a harsh, brittle sound. Your home. You do not pay the bills, Dad. I do. I pay the utilities. I buy the groceries. You just live here. You are a guest, and your invitation has been revoked. I stopped at the bottom of the porch steps. I looked up at them. Tyler had his arm around her waist, his chin resting on her shoulder. He looked like the king of the castle. You think you pay the bills, I asked? You transfer money to a household account every month, yes. But who pays the property tax, Kendra? Who pays the insurance? Who paid for the new roof last year? I do, Kendra said, uncertainly. It comes out of the joint account. I shook my head. Number 1, I pay it. I have been paying it for 5 years. And there is something else you need to know. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my wallet. I took out a folded piece of paper that I always carried with me. It was a copy of the property deed. Read this, I said, holding it up. Kendra squinted. What is that? It is the deed to this house, I said. You think it is in your name because I told you it was. I told you that so you would feel secure, so you would have an asset on your balance sheet when you started the company. But legally, Kendra, this house belongs to Roland Mercer. I put it in my name to shelter you from capital gains taxes when we moved your mother's trust fund. I protected you. This is my house, and you are the one who has to leave. The color drained from Kendra's face. She looked at the paper, then at me. She knew I did not lie about numbers. She knew I did not lie about paperwork. Tyler, however, did not look worried. He smiled that oily smile that made my skin crawl. He whispered something in Kendra's ear. Kendra stiffened. She looked at me, and for a second I saw shame in her eyes. But then she looked at Tyler, and the shame turned into resolve. It does not matter whose name is on the deed, Dad, she said, her voice trembling. Because you are not competent to manage your affairs. I frowned. What are you talking about? Remember last winter, Tyler said, speaking up for the first time. Remember when you had that bad flu, Dad? You were in the hospital for a week. You were delirious. You were so worried about your bills. I remembered. I had pneumonia. I was on heavy antibiotics. I was weak. You signed some papers, Dad, Kendra said. She reached into her purse, which was sitting on the porch railing. She pulled out a blue legal folder. You signed a durable power of attorney and a medical guardianship. You gave me full control over your assets and your living situation in the event that you became incapacitated or exhibited signs of mental decline. I stared at the folder. I remembered signing something. Kendra had told me it was just a temporary authorization to pay the hospital bills while I was unconscious. I had trusted her. I had signed without reading the fine print because she was my daughter. Tyler stepped forward. And accusing your daughter of theft, public humiliation, and exhibiting paranoid delusions about FBI conspiracies, those are classic signs of mental decline, Roland. Kendra opened the folder. We activated it this morning, she said. We filed the emergency motion while you were in lockup. The court granted temporary conservatorship. Legally, Dad, you are a ward of the state under my care. And as your guardian, I have decided that this environment is too stressful for you. Tyler grinned. We found a very nice facility for you, Roland. It is a bit far, but the rates are reasonable. We called the police, Dad, Kendra said, tears streaming down her face. They are on their way to escort you off the property. You have to leave. You have to go." I looked at my daughter. She was holding the paper like a shield. She was using my trust, my love, and my moment of weakness to destroy me. Tyler had guided her hand, but she was the one holding the knife. I realized then that I had lost the house. I had lost my daughter, and if I stayed, I would lose my freedom. If the police came and Tyler showed them that paperwork, they would drag me to a psych ward. I would be medicated and silenced. I looked at the pile of my belongings on the grass. My life, my memories, all of it trash to them. I nodded slowly. I understood the play. It was a checkmate. For now. "Fine," I said. "You win this round." I turned to walk away. I did not pick up my clothes. I did not pick up my records. I left it all there in the mud. But before I reached the street, I stopped. I turned back to look at them one last time. Tyler was kissing Kendra's cheek, victorious. Kendra was crying. "You think you have the money," I called out. My voice was calm, cold, and sharp like a ledger entry. Tyler looked up. "We know we have the money, old man. We have the company accounts. We have the house. We have everything." I smiled. It was the first time I had smiled in 24 hours. "The $90,000, I said. "The money you think you stole. The money you framed me for." "What about it?" Tyler sneered. "It is gone. You spent it." "No," I said. "It is not gone. And I did not spend it. You moved it, Tyler. You used my digital key, but you moved it to the routing number I set up in the system as a trap." Tyler frowned. "What trap?" "I call it the decoy account," I said. "It looks like an offshore shell company. It looks like a safe haven for stolen funds. But it is a mirror, Tyler. It is a digital dead end that I created 3 years ago to catch internal thieves." I saw a flicker of doubt in Tyler's eyes. "The money is sitting there," I continued. "It is frozen. It is tagged. And every time you try to access it, every time you try to ping that account, you are sending a GPS signal and a digital fingerprint directly to a server that you cannot delete." I tapped my temple. "You thought you were stealing from a senile old man, but you were stealing from a forensic accountant. You did not take the money, Tyler. You took the bait." I turned and walked away down the street. I could hear Tyler shouting behind me, asking Kendra what I was talking about. I could hear the panic starting to rise in his voice. I kept walking. I did not have a house. I did not have a car. I did not have my daughter. But I had my mind, and I had a plan. They thought the game was over. But I had just rolled the dice. I walked until I found a cheap motel on the edge of town. I paid cash for a room with a single bed and a flickering neon sign outside. I sat on the edge of the mattress and took a deep breath. I was alone, but I was free, and I had work to do. The $90,000 was just the beginning. The decoy account was real, but it was not just a trap for the money. It was a trap for Tyler Prescott, and he had just walked right into it. Now all I had to do was wait for him to wiggle. And when he did, I would be ready to pull the string. The neon sign of the Starlight Motel flickered outside my window, casting a rhythmic red glow across the stained carpet. It was 2 a.m, and the room smelled of stale cigarettes and despair. This was a far cry from the life I had built over 40 years, but it was the only safe harbor I had left. I sat at the wobbly desk, my laptop open and glowing in the dark. My back ached from the thin mattress, but my mind was razor sharp. I needed capital. Investigations cost money. Surveillance costs money. And fighting a federal case from a motel room costs a lot of money. I navigated to the website of my primary bank. This was not the secret offshore account I had mentioned to Tyler. This was my legitimate retirement fund, the money I had saved from decades of government service, the nest egg that was supposed to keep me comfortable until the end of my days. There was over $400,000 in that account, enough to hire the best private investigators in Chicago, enough to burn Tyler Prescott to the ground. I typed in my username and password. I hit enter. The screen flashed red. User access suspended. Contact administrator. I frowned. I typed it again, thinking my old fingers had slipped. User access suspended. I picked up my burner phone and dialed the 24-hour support line. I waited through 10 minutes of terrible jazz music, my foot tapping impatiently against the leg of the desk. Finally, a human voice came on the line. "Security Department, this is Sarah. How can I help you?" "My name is Roland Mercer," I said, my voice calm and controlled. "I am trying to access my accounts, but I am locked out." "One moment, Mr. Mercer, let me check your file." I heard the clicking of keys, then a long silence. The silence of someone who sees a flag on the screen that makes them uncomfortable. "Mr. Mercer, I see here that a court order was uploaded to your file this morning," Sarah said, her voice shifting from helpful to guarded. "Your accounts have been placed under the control of your court-appointed conservator." My grip on the phone tightened until the plastic creaked. Conservator. Who authorized this, I asked, though I already knew the answer. "The order was filed by Ms. Kendra Mercer," Sarah said. "She has been granted emergency temporary guardianship due to your medical incapacity. All withdrawal requests must be approved by her." I closed my eyes. Kendra, my brilliant, efficient daughter. She had not wasted a second. Tyler had whispered in her ear, and she had executed the maneuver with the ruthless efficiency I had taught her. She had cut off my supply lines. She had laid siege to my life. "But I am not incapacitated, Sarah," I said, keeping my voice level. "I am speaking to you right now. I am lucid. This is fraud. I cannot make that determination," Sir Sarah said, sounding robotic now. "The court order is valid. If you wish to contest it, you will need to speak with your guardian. Is there anything else I can help you with?" I hung up the phone. I stared at the red screen. I was a prisoner in my own financial life. They had taken my house. They had taken my reputation. And now they had taken my ability to fight back. I had cash in my pocket, maybe $2,000, but that would not last a week in this city. They wanted to starve me out. They wanted me to crawl back to them begging for a meal and a bed so they could lock me away in a facility and medicate me into oblivion. I stood up and walked to the window, pulling back the dusty curtain. I looked out at the empty parking lot. Rage boiled in my gut, hot and acidic. They thought they had checkmated me. They thought that by taking my money, they had taken my power. But they forgot that money is just a tool. Information is the weapon. I went back to the desk. I closed the banking tab and opened a terminal window. The screen turned black, filled with lines of green code. I might have been retired, but I never stopped learning, and I never stopped securing my assets. When I bought the house for Kendra 5 years ago, I did not just sign the deed. I wired the place. I installed a commercial-grade security system with independent servers and a cellular backup that bypassed the home Wi-Fi. I told Kendra it was for her safety. And it was, but it was also for mine. I typed in a command string that I had memorized long ago. The system pinged back. It was active. Tyler and Kendra had changed the Wi-Fi passwords, they had changed the locks, but they had not found the hardwired nodes in the walls. I executed the command to access the internal cameras. A grid of 6 video feeds popped up on my screen. The living room was dark, the kitchen was empty, but the feed from my home office was bright with light. I maximized the window. The image was crisp, high definition. And there he was. Tyler Prescott was sitting in my leather chair. He was drinking my vintage bourbon straight from the bottle. He had torn the room apart. My books were pulled off the shelves and thrown onto the floor. My filing cabinets had been pried open with a crowbar, the metal twisted and broken. Papers were scattered everywhere, tax returns, audit reports, receipts from 20 years ago. He was looking for something specific. He was not grabbing valuables. He had ignored the silver coin collection on the mantel. He was hunting for data. I watched him pick up a stack of files, flip through them, and toss them aside with a sneer. He looked frustrated. He was sweating. He ran a hand through his perfect hair, messing it up. He looked at the wall safe hidden behind the painting of the Chicago skyline. I leaned closer to the screen. "Good luck, Tyler," I whispered. "That safe is a decoy. It is empty." Tyler stood up and walked over to the painting. He ripped it off the wall and threw it down. He stared at the safe. He did not try to crack it. He did not try the keypad. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a high-powered drill with a diamond-tipped bit. He knew exactly what kind of safe it was. He came prepared. This was not the behavior of a simple con artist. This was a professional. I watched as he drilled into the side of the lock mechanism. It took him 10 minutes of grinding noise that I could imagine filling the silent house. Finally, the door popped open. He reached inside. He pulled out nothing. He slammed his hand against the wall in anger. "Where is it?" he shouted. The audio feed was crystal clear. "Where is the damn book?" He started tearing the room apart again. He ripped the cushions off the sofa. He overturned the desk drawers. He was looking for the Black Ledger. The Black Ledger was a myth in the Chicago underworld, but it was very real to me. It was a physical notebook where I had kept the names and account numbers of every dirty deal I had uncovered but could not prosecute due to lack of admissible evidence. It contained the routing numbers of cartels, politicians, and corrupt CEOs. It was my insurance policy. It was the reason I was still alive. If that book got out, it would start a war. Tyler knew about it. How did he know about it? Kendra did not know. No one knew except a few ghosts at the agency. I watched him stop. He was panting. He looked around the room, his eyes scanning every inch. Then his gaze landed on the floorboards under the rug. I held my breath. When I renovated the office, I had installed a floor safe. It was not digital. It was mechanical, old school, and hidden beneath a false subfloor panel. Tyler knelt down. He pulled back the rug. He tapped on the wood. He smiled. It was a predatory smile that chilled me to the bone. "Found you," he whispered. He used a pry bar to rip up the floorboard. There it was, the steel box. He did not need a drill for this one. He pulled a small stethoscope from his bag. He was cracking it the old way. I watched helpless as he turned the dial. Left, right, left. He had the combination. Or he had the skill to find it. Click. He opened the lid. He reached in and pulled out a black leather-bound notebook. My stomach dropped. He had it. He had the leverage of a lifetime in his hands. Tyler sat back on his heels. He opened the book. He ran his finger down the list of names. He started to laugh. It was a low, rumbling laugh that grew louder and louder until he was howling at the ceiling. He pulled out his phone. He dialed a number and put it on speaker. I turned up the volume on my laptop. "I got it," he said into the phone. "I have the list." A voice on the other end answered, deep and distorted. "Is it complete?" "It is a gold mine," Tyler said, flipping the pages. Mercer kept records on everyone. The Triad accounts. The Eastern Bloc shells. "It is all here." "Good," the voice said. "Initiate Phase 2. Tyler stood up, holding the book like a trophy. "Phase 2 is a go. We use the girl's company as the washing machine. With these account numbers, we can route the funds through her servers and make it look like legitimate traffic. We will wash $50 million a month." "And the girl?" the voice asked. Tyler smirked. "Kendra is the perfect patsy. She thinks she is scaling up. By the time the SEC catches on, I will be on a beach in non-extradition territory, and she will be facing 20 years for money laundering." "And the old man?" Tyler took a swig of the bourbon. "Roland is done. I have his money. I have his house. And now I have his secrets. If he tries to talk, I will leak a few pages of this book to the wrong people. The cartels will take care of him for us." "Understood," the voice said. "Get to work." The call ended. Tyler closed the book and kissed the cover. He looked straight into the camera lens hidden in the smoke detector as if he knew I was watching. He winked. I sat back in my chair in the motel room. The air felt thin. My heart was hammering against my ribs. This was not just about stealing $90,000. This was not just about stealing my retirement. This was a massive money laundering operation. Tyler was going to use K-Tech, my daughter's life work, to wash dirty money for international criminals. And when the dust settled, Kendra would take the fall. I looked at the screen. Tyler was leaving the room, the black book tucked under his arm. He thought he had won. He thought he had the ultimate weapon. But he had made one critical error. He assumed the information in that book was static. He assumed I had not updated those accounts. He assumed that the names in that book were still the ones holding the keys. I reached into my bag and pulled out my own black notebook. It was identical to the one Tyler had just stolen. The book in the floor safe was real, yes, but it was 5 years old. The accounts listed in there were monitored. They were flagged by the Treasury Department. I had set them up as honeypots years ago. Tyler was about to route millions of dollars of criminal money directly into accounts that were watched by the NSA. I smiled in the dark motel room. "Start Phase 2. Tyler," I whispered, "please, start moving that money." I opened a new terminal window. I could not stop him from using Kendra. Not yet. But I could make sure that when he turned on the faucet, he drowned in the flood. I began to type. If he wanted a war with the underworld, I would give him one. But first I had to survive the night. Because now that he had the book, he would not need me alive much longer. I packed my laptop. I grabbed my bag. I had to move. The Starlight Motel was not safe anymore. Tyler had resources I had not anticipated, and if he knew about the floor safe, he knew enough to find me. I slipped out into the night, leaving the key on the desk. The game had changed. It was no longer about proving my innocence. It was about saving my daughter's life before she became collateral damage in a global crime ring. I disappeared into the shadows of Chicago. I was a ghost now, and ghosts are very hard to kill. I spent the next 6 hours in the back corner of a 24-hour internet cafe in Uptown, the kind of place where the coffee tastes like battery acid, and nobody asks why an old man in a wrinkled suit is running forensic audit software on a public terminal. I needed a trail. Tyler Prescott was a ghost, but even ghosts leave footprints in the financial system if you know where to look. I was not looking for Tyler Prescott because I knew that name was as fake as his tan. I was looking for a pattern. I was looking for the algorithm of his greed. I started with the credit bureaus. I used a backdoor access code I had memorized 15 years ago, a legacy key from my days consulting for federal task forces. It was a risk, but I was already a fugitive in my own life, so one more violation did not matter. I searched for credit profiles that matched a specific set of parameters. Male, 30 to 40 years old. Sudden spikes in credit utilization followed by total default. So-signers on business loans who were female with high credit scores prior to the association. The search returned hundreds of hits. Chicago is a big city and con artists are a common breed. But I filtered the results. I looked for a specific vendor pattern. Tyler liked tech. He liked to sound smart. I looked for defaults involving server farms, IT consulting firms, and digital infrastructure. The list shrank to 12. I filtered again by geographic proximity to the high-end social circles Tyler frequented. One name popped up, Thomas Price. Thomas Price had defaulted on $300,000 in business loans 3 years ago. His co-signer was a woman named Monica Stevens. She was listed as the owner of a boutique educational consultancy in Naperville. The business had filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy 28 months ago. I pulled up Monica Stevens' current address. It was not in Naperville anymore. It was in a working-class suburb near the airport. The drop in zip code told me everything I needed to know. She had been bled dry. I packed my laptop and took the first train out to the suburbs. It was raining a cold, relentless drizzle that soaked through my coat. I found the house. It was a small bungalow with peeling paint and a yard that had not been mowed in weeks. A Toyota Corolla with a dented bumper sat in the driveway. This was the aftermath of a Tyler Prescott romance. I knocked on the door. After a long minute, the curtain moved. A woman looked out. She looked tired. Her eyes were dull, the spark long gone. She opened the door just a crack, leaving the security chain on. "Can I help you?" she asked, her voice guarded. "Ms. Stevens, my name is Roland Mercer. I am a forensic accountant. I am looking for a man who calls himself Tyler Prescott, but I believe you knew him as Thomas Price." Her face went pale. She tried to close the door, but I held up a hand, not pushing, just waiting. "I am not a debt collector, Ms. Stevens," I said softly. "He is doing it to my daughter right now. I need your help to stop him." She stopped. She looked at me, and for the first time she saw the desperation in my eyes. She undid the chain and opened the door. "Come in," she whispered. The inside of her house was clean but sparse. There were outlines on the walls where pictures used to hang. Furniture was missing. She led me to the kitchen table and poured me a cup of tea. I showed her a photo of Tyler and Kendra from the launch party. "Is this him?" I asked. She looked at the photo and flinched as if she had been burned. "Yes," she said. "That is Thomas. He looks exactly the same. Even the suit. I bought him that suit. Tell me how he did it," I said, taking out my notepad. "I need the mechanics, Monica. I need to know how he moved the money." She took a deep breath and began to speak. It was like listening to a recording of my own daughter's future. "He came in as an investor," she said, staring into her tea. "He said he wanted to scale my business. He said we needed to modernize. He set up a new billing system. He said we needed to buy proprietary software to manage the students. And the software I prompted. It did not exist," she said bitterly. "He set up a vendor called Apex Learning Solutions. He said they were the best. I signed the checks, Roland. I signed every single one. He told me it was for licenses for cloud storage for server maintenance. The invoices were for $10,000 a month." I nodded, writing furiously. Phantom services. The classic bust-out. By the time I realized the software was just a flashy interface with nothing behind it, the money was gone, she continued, tears welling in her eyes. He had drained the business lines of credit. He maxed out my personal cards to pay the vendors. When the money ran out, he vanished. The bank took my house in Naperville. The IRS audited me because Apex Learning Solutions was just a P.O. box in Delaware. I lost everything. She looked at me, and I saw the anger that had been simmering under her grief. He ruined me, Roland. And the police said it was a civil matter because I signed the checks. They said I was a bad businesswoman. They did not see the manipulation. I reached across the table and covered her hand with mine. It was not your fault, Monica. He is a predator. He hacks people, not computers. But this time he made a mistake. What mistake, she asked. He targeted a forensic accountant, I said. I left Monica's house with a copy of her bankruptcy filing and the old invoices from Apex Learning Solutions. I had the pattern. Now I needed the proof. I found a quiet corner in the airport terminal to work. It was anonymous and the Wi-Fi was fast. I opened my secure backup of K-Tech's financial records. I had mirrored the servers the night before the launch party, a habit I never broke. Kendra had revoked my access to the live system, but she could not revoke my access to the history. I pulled up the accounts payable ledger for the last 6 months. I filtered for new vendors. There were the usual suspects: utilities, rent, catering. But then I saw it. Nebula Cloud Systems. The first invoice was dated 2 weeks after Tyler started dating Kendra. It was for server migration and optimization. The amount was $5,000. Reasonable. But then the amounts climbed. $10,000. $20,000. $50,000. I pulled up the technical specifications listed on the invoice. They were charging for high-frequency trading servers, dedicated bandwidth, and military-grade encryption. I ran a diagnostic on the K-Tech platform using a backdoor developer tool I had built for Kendra years ago. The system was running on standard AWS instances. The total cost for the actual infrastructure K-Tech was using should have been maybe $4,000 a month. Nebula Cloud Systems was billing $45,000 a month. Tyler was marking up the server costs by 1,000%. He was buying cheap hosting, reselling it to K-Tech through a shell company, and pocketing the difference. It was the same scam he ran on Monica, just with bigger numbers. I dug deeper into Nebula Cloud Systems. I traced the corporate registration. It led to a registered agent in Wyoming, a state known for corporate anonymity. But I did not need the name of the owner. I needed the routing number. I cross-referenced the routing number on the Nebula invoices with the list of known shell entities I kept in my personal database. It did not match. But then I ran a trace on the IP address used to generate the digital invoices. The invoices were created on a device with the MAC address ending in 4F2A. I opened a separate log file on my computer, the log file from my home network. I searched for devices that had connected to my Wi-Fi in the last 3 months. There it was, Tyler's iPhone, MAC address ending in 4F2A. He was generating the invoices from his phone while sitting on my couch eating my food and dating my daughter. The audacity was breathtaking. He was not just stealing from the seed fund. He was draining the operating capital. He was bleeding the company dry $10,000 at a time. At this rate, K-Tech would be insolvent in 3 months. I sat back in the hard plastic airport chair. People rushed past me, dragging their luggage, heading to vacations and business meetings. They saw an old man staring at a spreadsheet. They did not see a man holding a smoking gun. I had him. I had the fraudulent invoices. I had the link to his device. I had the testimony of a past victim establishing a clear pattern of racketeering. I reached for my phone to call Kendra. My thumb hovered over her name. I wanted to scream the truth to her. I wanted to send her the files and say, look at what he is doing. But I stopped. I remembered her face in the parking lot. I remembered the hate in her eyes when she threw my clothes on the lawn. If I sent this to her now, Tyler would spin it. He would say I forged the invoices. He would say I hacked his phone. He would say it was another delusion of a jealous old man. She was not ready to listen. And if I played this card too early, Tyler would destroy the evidence and disappear just like he did with Monica. I needed more. I needed to catch him in the act of something undeniable. I needed to let him think he had won so completely that he would get careless. I closed the laptop. The $90,000 was a distraction. The real theft was happening in the accounts payable department. And if my calculations were correct, Tyler was about to ramp up the operation. He had the black ledger now. He thought he had the keys to the kingdom. He would get greedy. He would try to wash more money through those servers. I stood up. I had work to do. I had to find Sarah and Liz, the other names I had found in the credit database. I needed an army, because Tyler Prescott was not just a con artist. He was a virus. And you do not cure a virus by asking it nicely to leave. You burn it out. I walked toward the exit of the terminal. I was tired. I was hungry. I missed my home, but I had the scent of blood now. And for a forensic accountant, there is no greater fuel than the certainty of an unbalanced ledger. I was coming for him, and I was bringing the receipts. I stood in the service corridor of the Hyatt Regency ballroom, smelling the faint odor of floor wax and stale coffee. Through the crack in the double doors, I could see the backs of 200 reporters and industry bloggers. The room was bathed in the soft blue glow of the K-Tech branding. On the stage, my daughter sat in a chair, looking small and fragile, her eyes fixed on the floor. She looked like a prisoner of war. Standing at the podium was Tyler Prescott. He was wearing a navy blue suit that I knew he had charged to the company credit card. He looked solemn. He looked responsible. He looked like the hero of a tragedy he had written himself. I adjusted my collar. My ribs still ached from sleeping in the motel chair, and my suit was starting to look as tired as I felt, but I stood straight. I had spent the last 24 hours digging through the public tax records database using a loophole in the Freedom of Information Act that most people forgot existed. I had what I needed. It was not a weapon made of steel. It was a weapon made of paper. Tyler leaned into the microphone. His voice was thick with emotion, a perfectly calibrated performance of sorrow. "Thank you all for coming on such short notice," he said. "The last few days have been incredibly difficult for the K-Tech family and devastating for Kendra personally. As many of you know, there was an incident at our launch party involving Kendra's father, Roland Mercer." He paused, letting the silence build. He looked back at Kendra with a gaze that simulated concern, but I saw the warning in it. "We have tried to keep this private." Tyler continued, lowering his voice to a confidential hush. "We wanted to protect Roland. But after the outbursts and the wild accusations made on social media, we feel we owe our investors and the public an explanation." He took a deep breath. "Roland Mercer has been diagnosed with early-onset Alzheimer's disease complicated by acute paranoid delusions." The room erupted in the sound of shutter clicks and furious typing. I felt a cold rage spread through my chest. It was the perfect lie. It explained everything. It explained why I accused him. It explained the confusion about the money. It delegitimized every word I had said and every word I would say in the future. He was burying me alive under a medical diagnosis that did not exist. "He is confused," Tyler said, shaking his head sadly. "He believes he is a forensic accountant. He believes he is uncovering conspiracies. In his mind, he is the hero of a spy novel. But the reality is tragic. He is a sick man who has lashed out at the people who love him most. The embezzlement we uncovered was likely an act of confusion, a desperate attempt to regain control of a world he no longer understands." I watched Kendra. She did not look up. She did not protest. He had broken her spirit. Or maybe he had medicated her. She sat there like a statue while he dismantled my life. "We are not pressing charges," Tyler said, playing the benevolent saint. "We are seeking treatment for him. We are asking for privacy as we navigate this difficult family transition. I have stepped in to manage the company's finances and operations during this crisis to ensure that Kendra's vision remains intact. He was seizing control of the company in plain sight, and the press was applauding him for it. It was masterful. It was disgusting." I pushed open the double doors. I did not run. I did not shout. I walked down the center aisle with the slow, steady gait of a man who has walked into federal courtrooms for 40 years. I held a single sheet of paper in my right hand, holding it high above my head like a lantern. The sound of my footsteps on the carpet was swallowed by the room, but my presence rippled through the crowd. Heads turned, cameras pivoted. A whisper ran through the room like a brush fire. Tyler stopped speaking. He looked down at me from the stage. For a split second, his mask slipped. I saw the flash of pure annoyance, the look of a man dealing with a cockroach that refused to die. But he recovered quickly. "Dad," he said, his voice dripping with fake pity. "You should not be here. You need to rest." I did not stop walking until I was 10 feet from the stage. I stood in the pool of light. I looked at the reporters. I looked at the cameras, and then I looked at Tyler. I turned the piece of paper around so the front row could see it. It was a standard IRS Form 4506T request for transcript of tax return. But the data on it was what mattered. It was a certified summary of filings for one Tyler Prescott Social Security number ending in 4291. "This is a certified tax transcript," I said, my voice projecting clearly without a microphone. "It covers the last 5 years of Mr. Prescott's financial history." Tyler gripped the podium. "Security!" he barked, losing his soft tone. "Get him out of here. He is having an episode." I ignored him. I spoke to the journalists in the front row. "Line 32, I said, pointing to the document. "Adjusted gross income." The reporter for the Chicago Tribune leaned forward, squinting. "It says 0, she whispered. "0, I repeated. "For 5 years. Mr. Prescott claims to be an angel investor. He claims to have millions in capital. Yet according to the United States Treasury, he has earned $0 in taxable income since 2019. He has no capital gains. He has no dividends. He has no salary." The murmurs in the room changed tone. The pity was replaced by curiosity. "Reporters smell blood, and I had just cut Tyler open. He is lying," Tyler shouted, his face turning red. "That is a forged document. He is sick. Do not listen to him. Get him out of here now." 3 security guards materialized from the sides of the room. They were not hotel security. They were private contractors wearing ill-fitting suits and earpieces. Tyler had hired muscle. I kept my eyes on the crowd. "How does an investor invest with no income?" I asked. "How does a millionaire pay no taxes? Either he is the greatest tax evader in history, or he is a fraud who lives off the credit of the women he dates." The first guard grabbed my left arm. His grip was bruising. "Mr. Mercer, you need to come with us," he grunted. I did not resist. I let my body go limp, making me dead weight, making it harder for them to move me. I wanted the cameras to see this. I wanted them to see the brute force being used against an old man. "This man is a ghost," I shouted as they dragged me backward. "Ask him about Monica Stevens. Ask him about the server farm in Wyoming. Ask him why his social security number belongs to a deceased man from Ohio." Tyler ran down the stairs from the stage. He looked panicked. He needed to stop me from saying any more names. He needed to control the damage. He rushed toward the guards, waving his hands. "Get him out the side door," he yelled. Not through the lobby. The side door. He came close. Too close. He wanted to make sure I was silenced. He grabbed my lapel, his face inches from mine, his eyes wide with adrenaline and rage. "Shut up, old man," he hissed so only I could hear. "Just shut up. This was the moment. This was the only chance I would get." As the guards wrestled me toward the emergency exit and Tyler gripped my jacket, I reached into my pocket with my free hand. I had practiced this move 100 times in the mirror at the motel. It had to be smooth. It had to be invisible. I held a micro-digital recorder no bigger than a stick of gum between my thumb and forefinger. It was already recording. I stumbled forward, feigning weakness, falling into Tyler. "Get off me," I groaned. As we collided, I slipped the recorder into the side pocket of his expensive suit jacket. It slid deep into the silk lining. He did not feel a thing. He was too focused on shoving me away. He pushed me back into the arms of the guards. "Get him out of here," he screamed. The guards dragged me through the emergency doors into the alley behind the hotel. The cold air hit my face. They threw me onto the wet pavement. My knees scraped against the concrete. My paper, the tax transcript, fluttered away into a puddle. The heavy metal door slammed shut behind them, locking from the inside. I lay there for a moment, catching my breath. My shoulder throbbed where the guard had twisted it. I was bruised. I was dirty. And I had been thrown out like garbage once again. But then the door opened a crack. Tyler stepped out. He looked around to make sure we were alone. The guards stood behind him like statues. Tyler walked over to where I lay. He crouched down, careful not to get his Italian shoes wet. He looked at me with a mixture of pity and disgust. "You really do not know when to quit, do you, Roland?" he said softly. I looked up at him. "I am just doing the math, Tyler." He chuckled. "The math does not matter when you own the narrative. Did you see them in there? They think you are crazy. They think you are a tragedy. And tomorrow when I file the paperwork to have you committed, they will nod their heads and say it is for the best." He leaned in closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. A whisper that was now being recorded by the device sitting 3 inches from his chest. "Nobody believes a senile old black man, Roland," he said. "Not over a white guy in a $3,000 suit. That is just the way the world works. You had your time. You had your little career. But you are obsolete. I am going to take your daughter's company. I am going to sell it for parts. And you are going to rot in a state facility drooling on yourself while I spend your retirement on first-class tickets. He patted my cheek, a humiliating gesture. Goodbye, Dad. He stood up, turned around, and walked back into the hotel. The guards followed him. The door clicked shut. I lay in the alley listening to the hum of the city. Rain started to fall cold and sharp. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the receiver unit. It was paired to the micro recorder I had planted on him. The signal light was blinking green. It was transmitting. I put the earbud in my ear. The audio was crystal clear. I could hear the rustle of his fabric as he walked. I could hear his breathing. I could hear the muffled applause as he walked back into the ballroom. I stood up, brushing the dirt off my knees. I retrieved the soggy tax transcript from the puddle and folded it carefully, putting it back in my pocket. It had done its job. It had drawn him out. It had made him angry enough to get close. I was not obsolete, and the world might work the way he thought it did, but evidence was the great equalizer. He was wearing a wire now, my wire. And for the next few days, everywhere Tyler Prescott went, every deal he made, every threat he whispered, I would be right there with him listening. I walked out of the alley and merged into the crowd on the sidewalk. I was just an old man in a dirty suit walking in the rain. Nobody looked twice. But in my ear, I heard Tyler laughing. I heard him say to someone, probably a lawyer, I cannot believe he actually brought a tax return. Pathetic. Keep talking, Tyler, I whispered to the rain. Keep talking. I am recording every word. I sat in the darkness of the Starlight motel room staring at the small black receiver box on the wobbly laminate table. The green signal light pulsed rhythmically like a heartbeat in the silence. It had been 4 hours since the security guards threw me into the alley behind the hotel. 4 hours since I slipped the micro recorder into the silk lining of Tyler Prescott's jacket. My knees were stiff and my shoulder throbbed where the pavement had scraped away the skin, but physical pain was distant now. I was in work mode. I was a hunter waiting for the trap to snap. For the first 2 hours, all I heard was the muffled sounds of the press conference. I heard the camera shutters clicking like a swarm of insects. I heard Tyler weaving his narrative of the sad senile father-in-law. I heard the sympathy in the voices of the reporters as they ate up his lies. It made my stomach turn, but I did not stop listening. Patience is the primary weapon of a forensic accountant. You do not chase the money. You wait for the money to move. Around 10 o'clock, the ambient noise changed. The echo of the ballroom was gone, replaced by the hush of a luxury car interior. I heard the heavy thud of a door closing, then silence, then the sound of a phone dialing. Tyler was making a call. I put on my headphones and turned the volume up. The audio quality was pristine. The bug was a high-end piece of tech I had kept from a federal case involving union racketeering 10 years ago. It could pick up a whisper in a hurricane. "Hey, Vince," Tyler said, his voice relaxed and arrogant. "Yeah, it is done. The old man is toast." I buried him. I grabbed my notepad. Vince. That had to be Vincent Scarlatti, a disbarred lawyer who operated out of a strip mall in Cicero. He was known for setting up shell corporations for drug dealers. If Tyler was talking to Scarlatti, the timeline was accelerating. Did he have anything Vince asked over the car's speakerphone? The audio was faint but audible. Just a tax transcript. Tyler laughed. A piece of paper saying I made no money. Who cares? By tomorrow morning, everyone will think he forged it in a fit of dementia. I have the narrative, Vince. I own the truth now. There was a pause. I heard the clinking of glass. He was pouring a drink in the car. What about the girl, Vince asked. Is she going to be a problem? She looked shaky on the stage. I leaned forward, pressing the headphones tighter to my ears. This was it. This was the moment he would hang himself. Kendra is not going to be a problem, Tyler said. His voice dropped an octave, smooth and cold. She is a mess. She thinks her father is a criminal. She thinks her company is falling apart. She is putty in my hands. Is she going to sign the transfer papers Vince pressed? The Chinese investors are getting impatient. They want the IP by Friday or the deal is off. I wrote down Chinese investors, IP transfer. Friday. She will sign, Tyler said. I am making sure of it. She has been having trouble sleeping lately. So much stress. Poor thing. I have been helping her with her evening routine. I crush a little something into her vitamin water every night. just to take the edge off. My blood froze in my veins, the pen snapped in my hand. He was drugging her. "What are you giving her?" Vince asked, sounding amused rather than horrified. "Just a cocktail," Tyler said. "A little benzodiazepine mixed with a muscle relaxant. It makes her compliant. It makes her foggy. Yesterday I put a contract in front of her, told her it was a catering receipt, and she signed it without even reading the header. She is gone, Vince. She is walking around, but the lights are off." I felt a wave of nausea. This was not financial fraud anymore. This was assault. This was calculated biological warfare against my daughter. And after the sale, Vince asked, "What happens to her?" Tyler sighed, the sound of a man burdened by heavy responsibilities. "Well, once the assets are transferred to the shell company in the Cayman Islands, K-Tech will technically be bankrupt. Kendra will have a breakdown. It is inevitable. Losing her company and her father in the same week, it will be too much for her fragile mind. I have already spoken to Dr. Hill. We are going to have her committed to the same facility as her father. A nice family reunion in the psych ward. I will get power of attorney over both of them. I will liquidate the remaining assets, and you and I will be drinking mojitos in Rio by next month." The call ended. The car engine stopped. I heard Tyler humming a tune as he got out of the vehicle. I ripped the headphones off and threw them onto the bed. I stood up, pacing the small room like a caged animal. My hands were shaking not from fear, but from a rage so pure it felt like white heat. He was going to sell her life work. He was going to steal her future, and then he was going to lock her away in a mental institution until she rotted. I looked at the clock. It was midnight. Tyler said he gave her the cocktail every night. That meant she was likely under the influence right now. I could not call the police. I was the crazy old man with a restraining order looming over my head. If I called 911 and said my daughter was being drugged by her boyfriend based on a recording obtained through an illegal wiretap, they would arrest me. By the time the lawyers sorted out the admissibility of the evidence, the company would be sold, and Kendra would be in a straitjacket. I had to go. Now. I grabbed my keys and my flashlight. I left the laptop running, recording every second of silence from Tyler's jacket. I ran out to the rental car I had picked up that afternoon using a fake ID I kept for emergencies. I drove like a madman through the sleeping streets of Chicago. The rain was coming down hard now, turning the roads into slick mirrors. I ran 2 red lights. I did not care. My daughter was in a house with a monster, and she could not even keep her eyes open to see his teeth. I arrived at my house 20 minutes later. The house was dark. Tyler's car was not in the driveway. He must have gone to celebrate with Vince, or maybe he was at a hotel maintaining appearances. That meant Kendra was alone. I parked the car down the street so I would not be seen. I ran through the neighbor yards, ducking under hedges and jumping fences. I knew every inch of this neighborhood. I had walked these property lines for 5 years. I reached the back of my house. The kitchen window was dark. I tried the back door. Locked. Tyler had changed the locks just like he said. I went to the basement window well. When Kendra was a teenager, she used to sneak out this way. I had installed a latch that could be jimmied from the outside if you knew the trick. I prayed Tyler had not found it. I slid my hand between the frame and the glass. I felt the latch. I pushed. It clicked. I slid the window open and squeezed through, falling onto the concrete floor of the laundry room. I smelled bleach and fabric softener, the smell of home. I crept up the stairs, my heart hammering against my ribs. The house was silent. Too silent. "Kendra," I whispered. No answer. I moved through the kitchen. There was a glass of water on the counter, half empty. Next to it was a bottle of vitamins. I picked up the glass and sniffed it. It smelled faintly bitter, chemical. I ran to the living room. Empty. I ran up the stairs, taking them 2 at a time, ignoring the pain in my bad knee. I reached the hallway. The door to her bedroom was open a crack. "Kendra," I said louder this time. I pushed the door open. The room was illuminated by the street lamp outside, and there she was. Kendra was lying on the floor next to the bed. She was not moving. I rushed to her side and fell to my knees. Her skin was cold. Her breathing was shallow, ragged gasps. "Kendra, baby, wake up," I said, shaking her shoulders. She did not respond. Her head lolled back. Her eyes were rolled up into her head. Next to her hand lay an overturned bottle of prescription sleeping pills. They were scattered across the rug like white confetti. I grabbed the bottle. It was a prescription for Ambien written by Dr. Hill, the corrupt doctor Tyler had mentioned. This was not just the cocktail, this was an overdose. Was it a suicide attempt induced by the despair Tyler had manufactured? Or had he decided to skip the psych ward and go straight to the funeral? I checked her pulse. It was thready and weak. She was fading. I pulled out my phone to call 911, but then I stopped. If I called the paramedics, Tyler would arrive with them. He would play the grieving boyfriend. He would say she took the pills because she was depressed about her father's crimes. He would bury me with this. And if she survived, he would have her committed immediately for being a danger to herself. I could not let him control the narrative of her death or her rescue, but I could not save her alone. I needed medical help, and I needed it 5 minutes ago. I looked at my daughter. She looked so small, so helpless. I made a decision. I scooped her up in my arms. She was heavier than I remembered, but adrenaline gave me the strength of a younger man. I carried her down the stairs, kicking the front door open. I was not taking her to the nearest hospital. That was where Tyler would look. I was taking her to St. Jude's, the county hospital on the other side of the city. I knew a nurse there. Sarah, one of the women I had found in my investigation, one of Tyler's victims. I put Kendra in the passenger seat of the rental car and reclined the seat. I buckled her in. "Hang on, baby," I whispered, starting the engine. "Just hang on. Dad is here." I peeled out of the driveway, tires screeching. As I sped down the street, I looked in the rearview mirror. Headlights appeared behind me, a black sedan. It was moving fast, aggressive. My phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. "I see you, Roland. Bring her back or I call the cops and tell them you kidnapped her." Tyler had cameras too. He had seen me take her. I floored the gas pedal, let him call the cops, let him chase me. Tonight he was not dealing with a victim. He was dealing with a father who had nothing left to lose. I swerved onto the highway, merging into traffic at 80 miles an hour. The black sedan followed, weaving through cars to catch up. The race was on, and my daughter's life was the finish line. I screeched into the ambulance bay of St. Jude's Hospital with the engine of the rental car smoking and the tires bald from the friction of the highway. I had lost the black sedan 3 miles back by cutting through a construction site in the industrial district, but I knew my time was limited. I jumped out of the car and opened the passenger door, scooping Kendra into my arms again. She was limp. Her skin was gray under the harsh fluorescent lights of the emergency entrance. I screamed for help, my voice cracking with a panic I had not felt since the night my wife Viola died in a hospital corridor just like this one 20 years ago. 2 nurses and a resident doctor rushed out with a gurney. I laid her down gently, my hands shaking as I let her go. She took pills, I gasped out breathless. Ambien. And she has been drugged with something else for weeks. A cocktail. I do not know what it is. The doctor shone a light into Kendra's eyes. Her pupils were pinpoint small, then blown wide. "Get her to Trauma 1, the doctor shouted. "We need to pump her stomach. Get a tox screen stat." They wheeled her away through the swinging double doors. I tried to follow, but a nurse held me back. "Sir, you have to stay here," she said firmly. "Let us work." I stood there, covered in sweat and road dust, watching my daughter disappear into the bowels of the hospital. I felt a phantom pain in my chest. It was the same helplessness I felt when Viola passed. Back then it was poverty that killed her. We could not afford the specialist she needed. I had sworn on her grave that I would never be helpless again. I had sworn that money would never be the reason I lost someone I loved. But here I was, a millionaire with $2 million in a secret account, and I was just as powerless as I was 20 years ago. I collapsed into a plastic chair in the waiting room. I checked my watch. It had been 40 minutes since I took Kendra from the house. Tyler would be coming. He knew where I would go. St. Jude's was the only hospital in the city that did not ask questions about insurance up front. It was where the poor people went. It was where people like me went when they had nowhere else to turn. I sat there for an hour staring at the clock. Every minute felt like a year. Finally, the doctor came out. He looked tired. "Mr. Mercer," he asked. I stood up, my knees popping. "Is she alive?" "She is stable," the doctor said. "We got to her in time. We pumped her stomach. She ingested a lethal dose of sedatives, but her vitals are returning to normal. She is unconscious and will be for a while, but she is going to make it." I let out a breath that sounded like a sob. "Thank you. Thank you." But before I could ask to see her, the automatic doors at the hospital entrance slid open. The cold night air rushed in, followed by a storm. Tyler Prescott strode in wearing a fresh suit, his face a mask of frantic worry. But he was not alone. Flanking him were 2 uniformed Chicago police officers. "There he is," Tyler shouted, pointing an accusatory finger at me. "That is the man who kidnapped my fiancée." The officers moved toward me, their hands resting on their holsters. I stood my ground. I did not run. I was a father who had just saved his daughter. I had nothing to hide. Officers, I said, raising my hands slowly. I brought my daughter here for medical attention. She overdosed. He is lying, Tyler screamed, rushing past the cops to stand in front of me. He broke into our house. He assaulted me. And then he dragged Kendra out of bed while she was sleeping. He has been harassing us for days. He is obsessed. He is trying to kill her. I looked at Tyler. His eyes were wild but calculated. He was playing the role of his life. Tyler. She took pills. I said, my voice low and dangerous. She tried to kill herself because of what you are doing to her. You did this. Tyler spat, tears suddenly streaming down his face. You drove her to this with your paranoia. You told her she was broke. You told her she was a failure. You broke her mind, Roland. And now you are trying to finish the job. One of the officers stepped between us. Sir, step back, he said to me. I looked at the cop. Officer, this man is a con artist. He is poisoning her. Save it for the judge, the officer said. Tyler reached into his jacket pocket. He pulled out a folded piece of paperwork. It had a blue court stamp on the top. Officer, I have an emergency order of protection, Tyler said, his voice trembling with fake emotion. It was granted by a judge 2 hours ago. It states that Roland Mercer is not allowed within 500 feet of Kendra Mercer or myself. He is in violation of a court order. My heart stopped. An emergency restraining order. Ex parte. That meant he had gone to a judge without me present, spun a story about a dangerous, mentally unstable father, and gotten a signature. It was a legal weapon, and Tyler knew exactly how to wield it. The officer took the paper. He read it under the harsh lights. He looked at the stamp. He looked at the date. Then he looked at me. Mr. Mercer, is this you? He asked, pointing to the name on the order. It is my name, I said. But that order is based on lies. The officer shook his head. That is not for me to decide, sir. This is a valid court order. You are in direct violation. You need to leave this hospital immediately. But my daughter is in there, I pleaded. She just survived an overdose. She needs me. She has her fiancé, the officer said, gesturing to Tyler. He is her legal guardian under this order. You are the threat. Tyler stepped forward, a smug smile flickering at the corners of his mouth, invisible to the cops, but clear as day to me. I will take good care of her, Roland, he whispered. Do not worry. I will make sure she gets exactly what she needs. I knew what that meant. He would isolate her. He would finish what he started with the pills. He would make sure she never woke up long enough to sign a revocation of the sale. I lunged at him. I could not help it. The rage took over. You touch her again, and I will kill you, I roared. The officers grabbed me. They slammed me against the wall, my cheek pressed against the cold plaster. That is a threat, Tyler shouted. Did you hear that? He threatened my life. You are under arrest for violation of a protective order, the officer said, cuffing my hands behind my back. But we are going to cut you a break because of your age. We are escorting you off the premises. If you return, you go to jail. Do you understand? They dragged me toward the exit. I twisted my head back, looking at the double doors where Kendra lay sleeping. Kendra, I shouted. Kendra, wake up. Do not trust him. Tyler stood watching me go. He waved a small, sad wave. He looked like the grieving son-in-law watching a tragedy unfold. The officers threw me out onto the sidewalk. The rain had stopped, but the air was freezing. Stay away from here, old-timer, the cop said. Next time we won, not be so nice. They went back inside, leaving me alone in the dark. I stood there shivering, my hands clenched into fists. I had saved her life only to lose her again. The law, which I had served for 40 years, had been turned into a weapon against me. I was locked out. I was powerless. I walked around the side of the hospital to a dark alcove near the dumpsters. I could not leave. I had to find a way back in. I had to know she was safe. A side door opened. A figure stepped out wearing scrubs. She looked around nervously, then spotted me in the shadows. Mr. Mercer, she hissed. I stepped into the light. It was Sarah. She was one of the women I had tracked down the nurse Tyler had swindled 3 years ago. I had called her on the way to the hospital, begging her to meet me. Sarah, I said, rushing to her. Is she okay? Is he in there with her? He is in the room. Sarah said, her voice shaking. He ordered all the nurses out. He said he needed a moment alone with his fiancée. He has a private security guard posted at the door. I cursed. He was securing the asset. Did you get it? I asked. Sarah nodded. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a folded printout. It was the toxicology report from Kendra's blood work. the official lab results. I grabbed at my eyes, scanning the medical jargon. I saw the levels for the Ambien. They were high lethal without intervention. But then I saw something else. A second compound detected in her bloodstream, scopolamine. I froze. I knew what scopolamine was. In the forensic world, we called it devil's breath. It was not a recreational drug. It was a weapon. It came from the borrachero tree in Colombia. It wiped out free will. It turned people into obedient zombies. Victims under the influence of scopolamine would empty their bank accounts, help thieves rob their own homes, and sign any document put in front of them all while appearing fully conscious and cooperative. Afterward, they would remember nothing. Tyler was not just sedating her. He was chemically lobotomizing her. He was turning my brilliant, strong-willed daughter into a puppet so he could walk her through the sale of her company and the transfer of her assets without her fighting back. This explains everything, I whispered. The confusion, the compliance, the signature on the sale documents. She was not drugged to sleep. She was drugged to obey. He is dosing her. Sarah said, her eyes wide with horror. We found high concentrations. He must have been giving it to her for weeks. Small doses at first, then more. Tonight was an overdose. Maybe he miscalculated. Or maybe he tried to finish her off. Or maybe he needed her completely under for the wedding, I said. The wedding, Sarah asked. I looked at the date on the report, then I looked at my watch. He said he wanted to secure the asset, I said. He tried to get power of attorney through the mental health angle, but that takes time. Marriage is faster. If he marries her, he becomes her next of kin. He gets control of her medical decisions. He gets control of her estate if she dies without a will. I looked at Sarah. When is he planning to move her? He requested a transfer to a private facility in the morning, Sarah said. He said St. Jude's was not good enough for her. He is taking her to a place where he can control the doctors, I said, where he can finish the wedding without witnesses. I looked up at the hospital tower. My daughter was up there floating in a chemical fog with a monster holding her hand. Thank you, Sarah, I said, putting the report in my pocket. This proves everything. This proves he is poisoning her. What are you going to do? Sarah asked. You cannot go back in there. The police are watching for you. I am not going back in tonight, I said. I cannot fight the police and Tyler at the same time. I need a bigger team. I looked at the toxicology report one last time. This was the smoking gun. But a smoking gun is useless if you do not have a court to present it to, and the courts were closed until morning. I have to stop a wedding, I said. I turned and walked away from the hospital. I had 24 hours, maybe less. Tyler was going to marry my daughter while she was high on devil's breath. He was going to say I do for her. I needed Monica, I needed Liz, and I needed to make a call to a certain federal agent who owed me a favor from 1998. Tyler Prescott wanted a family reunion. I was going to give him one, but I was bringing the guests he never invited. I stood under the flickering street lamp outside the check cashing store in the south suburbs of Chicago. The rain had started again, a cold mist that soaked through my cheap suit, but I did not feel it. I was running on adrenaline and the burning need for retribution. Inside the store, behind a wall of bulletproof glass, sat Elizabeth Vance. In my notes, she was Liz, the former branch manager of City Trust. 2 years ago, she had a corner office and a bright future. Then she met Tyler Prescott, who was calling himself Ryan Cole back then. Now she was cashing welfare checks and lottery tickets for minimum wage. I walked up to the window. She looked up. Her eyes were hard, suspicious. She saw an old black man in a disheveled suit, and she reached for the silent alarm button under the counter. I did not blame her. In her world, trouble usually looked like me. I pressed a photo against the glass. It was not a picture of me. It was a picture of Tyler taken from the K-Tech website. He was smiling that shark-like smile, holding a glass of champagne. Liz froze. Her hand stopped moving. She stared at the photo, and I saw the color drain from her face. The hardness in her eyes cracked, revealing a deep, raw wound. I am not a cop, I said, my voice muffled by the thick glass. And I am not a debt collector. My name is Roland Mercer. That man is dating my daughter, and he is killing her. Liz looked at me. She searched my face for a lie, but she found only the exhaustion of a father who was out of time. She buzzed the door open. I walked into the secure cage. It smelled of ozone and cheap coffee. Liz stood up. She was tall, fierce, but broken. He goes by Tyler now, I asked. She nodded. He was Ryan when he knew me. He said he was a venture capitalist. He needed bridge loans. I authorized them. I bypassed the protocols because I loved him. When the loans defaulted, he vanished. The bank fired me. They threatened to prosecute. I lost my pension. I lost my reputation. He is doing it again, I said. He has my daughter in St. Jude's Hospital. He has her drugged. He is selling her company out from under her. And I need someone who knows how to track a wire transfer through a maze of shell accounts. Liz looked at the photo again. She ripped it out of my hand and crumpled it into a ball. I do not just want to stop him, she whispered. I want to hurt him. You will, I promised. But I cannot do it alone. We went to Monica's house. It was the only safe place left. Monica was waiting for us. When Liz walked in, the two women looked at each other. They did not know each other, but they recognized the scars. They were sisters in a sorority no one wanted to join. The victims of Tyler Prescott. Then Sarah arrived. She was still wearing her scrubs from the hospital, dark circles under her eyes. She looked at the group assembled in the small kitchen. A teacher, a banker, a nurse, and a forensic accountant. We looked like a jury. I stood at the head of the table. I laid out the toxicology report. I laid out the tax transcript. I laid out the invoices from the fake server farm. This is not a game, I said, my voice low and steady. This man is a predator. He eats lives. He has taken everything from you, your money, your careers, your trust. Now he is trying to take my daughter's life. We have one chance to stop him. I looked at each of them. We are going to dismantle him, not with violence. Violence heals. We are going to use the truth, and we are going to use the system he thinks he has mastered. I turned to Liz. Liz, you are the money. Tyler is moving assets. He is selling K-Tech to a shell company. I need you to find the escrow account. I need you to track the flow. He thinks he is hiding the money in the Caymans, but every transfer leaves a digital echo. You know the banking codes. You know the compliance triggers. Find the money and flag it. Make the system choke on his transaction. Liz nodded, her eyes gleaming. I still have friends in compliance. I can trigger a suspicious activity report. I can freeze that transfer for 48 hours. Good, I said. That buys us time. I turned to Monica. Monica, you are the pattern. You know his timeline. You know how he operates when he is cornered. Go through your old emails. Find the lawyers he used to threaten you. Find the fake investors he cited. We need to prove this is a racketeering operation, not a series of bad romances. We need to give the FBI a map so clear a child could read it. I will bury him in paper, Monica said, her voice fierce. And Sarah, I said, turning to the young nurse, you are the most important. You are my eyes and ears. You have to go back to St. Jude's. You have to get close to that room. Do not let him see you, but watch everything. Watch who comes in. Watch what they give her. If he tries to move her, I need to know before the wheels on the gurney turn. Sarah looked nervous, but she nodded. I can switch shifts. I can get on the floor. I will watch her like a hawk. And what do you do? Mr. Mercer, Liz asked. I smiled a cold, humorless smile. I am the accountant, I said. I am going to reconcile the books. I am going to take all the pain he caused you, all the money he stole, all the lies he told, and I am going to convert them into a prison sentence that ends when he is 90 years old. We worked through the night. The kitchen became a war room. Liz was on her laptop, hacking through banking firewalls using backdoors she should have forgotten. Monica was organizing timelines, building a dossier of fraud that stretched back 10 years. I was coordinating, analyzing the data, building the narrative for the prosecutor. For the first time in days, I felt a glimmer of hope. Tyler thought he was fighting a senile old man. He did not know he was fighting a hydra. But then Sarah's phone buzzed. It was a text from a colleague at the hospital. Sarah read it and her face went white. She dropped the phone on the table. Oh God, she whispered. What is it? I asked, my heart skipping a beat. Is she dead? No, Sarah said. It is worse. Tyler is escalating. He is calling in a favor from the hospital administration. He has a priest coming in. A priest, I asked, confused. For last rites. No, Sarah said, tears welling in her eyes. For a wedding. The room went silent. He is claiming it is Kendra's dying wish. Sarah continued reading the texts rapidly. He told the admin that Kendra knows she might not make it through the night. He said she wants to die as his wife. He is playing the tragic lover. He has a priest lined up who is willing to perform an emergency ceremony in the recovery room. I felt the blood drain from my face. A deathbed wedding. It was the ultimate con. If he marries her, Liz said, her voice flat with horror, he becomes her next of kin immediately. The power of attorney becomes irrelevant. He gets control of her medical decisions. He gets control of her estate. He can pull the plug, Monica whispered. If they are married, he can legally decide to stop life support. He can kill her and call it mercy. And he inherits everything I added. K-Tech, the house, the life insurance. He does not need to sell the company if he owns the corpse of the CEO. I looked at the clock on the wall. It was 4 a.m. When is this happening? I asked Sarah. Sunrise, she said. He wants to do it at sunrise. He says it is romantic. Sunrise was in 2 hours. He is not doing this for romance, I said, standing up and grabbing my coat. He is doing this because the courts open at 9. He needs to be her husband before I can file an injunction. He needs to seal the deal while she is still too drugged to say no. I looked at my team. They looked terrified. They knew what this meant. If Tyler married Kendra, the game was over. He would win. He would legally own my daughter. We have to stop this, I said. How? Liz asked. You have a restraining order. If you step foot in that hospital, they will arrest you on sight. You won't get within 100 feet of that room before they tackle you. I know, I said, buttoning my jacket. I cannot walk in there as Roland Mercer the father. I cannot walk in there as a concerned citizen. Then how do you get in? Monica asked. I looked at Sarah. Sarah, I asked, does St. Jude's still use the old analog PA system for emergency codes? The one that overrides the local speakers in the patient rooms? She nodded, confused. Yes. It is for fire alarms and code blues. It is hardwired. And where is the maintenance access for that system? I asked. It is in the basement, she said, next to the laundry chutes. But why? I looked at the recorder in my pocket, the recorder that had captured Tyler laughing about drugging my daughter. The recorder that had his voice admitting to the fraud. I am not going to stop the wedding, I said. I am going to let him start it. I am going to let him stand there holding her hand in front of the priest and the doctors. I am going to let him say his vows. And then I asked Liz, and then I said, I am going to let Tyler Prescott give a speech. To the whole hospital. I turned to the door. Sarah, I need your badge. Liz, keep tracking the money. Monica, get the car. We are going to a wedding, and I have a toast I want to make. Sarah texted me from inside the hospital room at 6 a.m. The message was short and terrified. He is doing it now. He is making her sign. I sat in the front seat of Monica's car parked 3 blocks away, rain drumming on the roof like a funeral march. I had my laptop tethered to my phone and 3 windows open. One was the K-Tech corporate filing portal. One was the internal email server for the company board of directors. And one was a live audio feed from the bug I had planted on Tyler. I put in my earpiece. The sound of rustling paper filled my head. I heard Tyler's voice, smooth and coercive, the voice of a man who thought he had already won. Just sign right here, baby, he whispered. It is just the medical release forms. We need this so I can take you to the private clinic. They cannot treat you unless you sign. I heard a low moan. It was Kendra. It was the sound of a woman drowning in deep water trying to find the surface. I cannot see, she mumbled her words, slurred and heavy. It is blurry, Tyler. That is just the medication, babe, Tyler said, his patience thinning. Trust me. I read it for you. It is standard stuff. Here, hold the pen. Let me help you. My hand clenched around the steering wheel. He was physically guiding her hand. He was forcing my daughter to sign away 5 years of her life, 5 years of sleepless nights and coding marathons. The document was not a medical release. I had seen the draft in his email outbox. It was a stock purchase agreement selling 100% of K-Tech's intellectual property and assets to a shell company called Obsidian Holdings for the price of $10,000. He was stealing a $5 million company for the price of a used car. Okay, there we go, Tyler said softly. One more signature. Right here. Good girl. I heard the scratch of the pen on paper. It was the sound of theft. It was the sound of rape. I felt a surge of nausea, but I forced it down. Emotion was a luxury I could not afford. I needed to be a machine. I needed to be the accountant. Sarah texted again. He has the papers. He is smiling. He is calling the lawyers. I switched tabs on my laptop. It was time. Tyler thought he knew everything about K-Tech. He thought he knew the bylaws. He thought he knew the shareholder structure. He saw Kendra owned 51% of the voting stock and investors owned 49%. He thought getting Kendra's signature gave him controlling interest, but he had missed the footnote on page 42 of the original incorporation documents. The documents I had drafted for Kendra 5 years ago when she was just a kid with a dream and a laptop. I had inserted a clause for a single share of Class B preferred stock, a golden share. This share had zero economic value. It paid no dividends. It was worth nothing on the open market. But it carried one specific right: veto power over any sale, merger, or liquidation of the company's intellectual property. And that share belonged to Roland Mercer. I had never told Kendra about it. I did not want her to feel like I was hovering. I did not want her to feel like she did not own her own company. I kept it as a fail-safe, a fire extinguisher behind glass to be broken only in case of emergency. This was the emergency. I opened the pre-written legal notice on my screen. It was a formal exercise of veto rights attaching the digital certificate of my golden share. I added the timestamp of the fraudulent signature Tyler had just obtained. I hit send. The document flew through the digital ether. It landed in the inbox of the company general counsel. It landed in the inbox of the board members. And most importantly, it landed in the inbox of the escrow agent Tyler was using to facilitate the transfer. I waited. In my earpiece, I heard Tyler humming. He was happy. He was victorious. He dialed a number. "It is done," he said into the phone. "The papers are signed. Uploading the scans now. Release the funds to the Cayman account." I listened to the silence on the other end of the line. Then I heard Tyler gasp. "What do you mean blocked?" he snapped. "What holds?" "There are no holds. She is the majority shareholder and she just signed." He paused, listening. His breathing got heavy, fast, and shallow. "What golden share?" he screamed. "That does not exist." I checked the books. There is no Class B stock. He was pacing now. I could hear his shoes squeaking on the hospital linoleum. "Roland Mercer," he hissed. "How does he have a veto? He is a nobody. He is a bookkeeper." I smiled in the dark car. I was not just a bookkeeper, Tyler. I was the architect. The voice on the other end must have told him the bad news. The sale was dead. The escrow agent would not touch the deal with a 10-foot pole, not with a valid veto order on file. The assets were frozen. The intellectual property was locked down. Tyler let out a roar of pure primal rage. I heard something shatter against the wall, probably a vase or a water pitcher. Sarah texted me. "He just threw a lamp. He is terrified. He is looking at Kendra like he wants to kill her." I typed back, "Stay hidden. Do not let him see you. He is going to run or he is going to fight." I heard Tyler panting in the earpiece. "He did this," he whispered to himself. "The old man. He is still in my way." He dialed another number. This was not a lawyer. This was not a banker. The tone of his voice changed. It became low, guttural, and dangerous. "Yeah, it is me," he said. "We have a problem. The old man is still breathing, and he just cost me $5 million. He paused. "No, I do not want him scared," Tyler said. "I want him broken. I want him in the hospital. I want him unable to type, unable to speak. Find him. He is at that cheap motel on 5th, room 102. Break his hands, both of them, and make sure he knows it is from me." I froze. He knew where I was staying. I had checked out of the motel 2 days ago, but I had kept the room paid up as a decoy just in case I needed to lure him there. But I was not at the motel. I was in Monica's car. Wait. If I was not at the motel, his goons would find an empty room. They would leave. And Tyler would still be free. He would still be a threat. He would find another way to hurt Kendra. I needed him to commit a violent felony. I needed him to cross the line from white-collar fraud to organized crime. Fraud gets you 5 years in a minimum security camp. Ordering a hit gets you 20 years in a supermax. But I needed proof. I needed the assault to happen, and I needed to link it to that phone call. I looked at the clock. It was 6:30. The traffic was light. "I can make it," I whispered. I started the car. "Mr. Mercer." "What are you doing?" Monica asked from the back seat, waking up from a nap. "I am going to the motel," I said, putting the car in gear. "Are you crazy?" she said, sitting up. "You heard him? He is sending people to break your hands." "Exactly," I said. "And if I am not there, they cannot do it. And if they cannot do it, I cannot prove Tyler ordered it." "But they will hurt you," she cried. "They will try," I said, merging onto the street. "But pain is temporary, Monica. Evidence is forever." I drove to the motel. I parked the car around the block and walked to room 102. I unlocked the door and went inside. The room was musty. I checked the hidden camera I had installed in the smoke detector. It was still recording. I checked the audio feed. It was live. I sat down in the single chair facing the door. I put my hands on the table. I waited. 10 minutes passed, then 20. I heard a car pull up outside. Heavy doors slamming. Footsteps on the pavement, not the light steps of a businessman, the heavy boots of men who hurt people for a living. The doorknob turned, locked. A heartbeat of silence. Then the door exploded inward. The wood splintered around the lock. 2 men burst in. They were huge, wearing leather jackets and ski masks. They held baseball bats. They saw me sitting there, calm and waiting. For a second they hesitated, confused by my lack of fear. Roland Mercer, one of them, grunted. "That is me," I said, my voice steady, though my heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. "This is a message," the man said, "from a friend." He swung the bat. He did not aim for my head. He aimed for my arm. He knew his orders. Break the hands. I tried to pull back, but I was not fast enough. The wood connected with my left forearm. The sound was like a dry branch snapping in winter. The pain was immediate, blinding, and white-hot. It shot up my shoulder and exploded in my brain. I fell out of the chair, gasping, clutching my arm. The second man stepped forward. He kicked me in the ribs. I curled into a ball, trying to protect my head. "Make the call," the first man said. The second man pulled out a phone. He dialed. He put it on speaker. "It is done, boss," he said. "The old man is down. His arm is snapped. He will not be typing anything for a long time." I heard Tyler's voice through the phone, loud and clear in the quiet room. "Good. Now finish it. Make sure he cannot walk either." The man raised his boot. That was it. That was the link. Tyler ordering violence in real time, recorded on video and audio. I had the evidence. Now I just had to survive the next 30 seconds. "Please," I gasped, looking up at the camera lens. "I will sign. I will do whatever you want." The man hesitated. He looked at the phone. "He says he will sign, boss." Tyler laughed. It was a cruel, victorious sound. Too late. Break his legs. The man raised his boot again, but before he could bring it down, sirens wailed outside. Not one siren. 6. I had called the police the moment I entered the room. I had timed it. I knew the response time for a violent break in progress in this district was 8 minutes. The goons froze. They looked at the door, then at the window. Cops, one of them, shouted. They dropped the phone. They ran for the back window, crashing through the glass and disappearing into the alley. I lay on the floor, clutching my shattered arm. The pain was a living thing, tearing at my sanity. But through the agony, I started to laugh. It was a wet, wheezing laugh. I looked at the phone they had dropped. It was still connected. "Tyler," I rasped into the speaker. Silence. Then a terrified breath. "Roland," Tyler whispered. "I got you," I said, my voice trembling with pain and triumph. "I got you on tape, Tyler. Attempted murder, conspiracy, assault." "You are bluffing," he stammered. "You are hurt. You cannot do anything." I looked up at the smoke detector. The little red light was blinking. "Smile, Tyler," I whispered. "You are on candid camera." The line went dead. I lay back on the stained carpet. The room was spinning. The police were banging on the door. My arm was broken. My ribs were bruised. But I had never felt stronger. He had taken my money. He had taken my house. He had taken my daughter. But I had just taken his freedom. I closed my eyes and let the darkness take me. Phase 1 was complete. Now it was time for the wedding. I woke up in a hospital bed at St. Jude's. My left arm was encased in a heavy plaster cast, and my ribs were taped so tight I could barely take a shallow breath. The pain meds made the room swim, but I forced my mind to focus. I was not done. The police had taken my statement about the assault at the motel. They had issued a warrant for the 2 attackers, but Tyler was still free. He was insulated by layers of plausible deniability. He would claim he never made that call. He would claim the voice on the recording was a deep fake. He had expensive lawyers who could delay an arrest warrant for days. But I did not need days. I only needed a few hours. I reached for my burner phone on the bedside table. My fingers were stiff and swollen, but I managed to put the earbud in. The audio feed from the bug in Tyler Prescott's jacket was still live. The battery was low, but it was holding. I heard the frantic clicking of a keyboard. Tyler was typing. He was breathing hard, fast, shallow gasps, like a man running a marathon. "Where is it?" he muttered to himself. "Where is the liquidity?" He was looking for money. The deal to sell the company was dead, thanks to my veto. The hit on me had failed, which meant he had to pay the goons or they would turn on him. He needed cash and he needed it now. I listened as he navigated the K-Tech banking portal. I could visualize every screen he was looking at because I had designed the interface. He went to the seed fund ledger. He went to the line item for the $90,000. The money he had accused me of stealing in front of 200 people. The money that started this war. He clicked on the transfer details. I closed my eyes and smiled. I had been waiting for this moment since the launch party. Tyler gasped. It was a sound of pure confusion. What the hell, he whispered. He was staring at the beneficiary field of the transfer. He expected to see an offshore shell company. He expected to see a generic holding account. Instead, he saw his own name, Tyler Prescott. But it was not just his name. It was linked to a specific taxpayer identification number, a TIN that ended in 8842. I heard him pick up his phone and dial his lawyer. "Vince," he hissed, "you need to look at something. I am looking at the $90,000 that the old man moved. It is not gone. It is sitting in a trust account. So take it." Vince said, his voice tinny over the speaker. "You have access. Transfer it back to operations and drain it." "I cannot." Tyler snapped. "You do not understand. The account is under my name, but it is listed under the identity I used in Ohio. The identity I used for the solar panel scam 3 years ago." There was a long silence on the line. Roland Mercer was a forensic accountant. He did not just move money, he weaponized it. I lay back against the pillows, letting the pain in my arm anchor me to reality. This was the trap. This was the beauty of the audit trail. When I moved that $90,000, I did not steal it. I placed it in what we call a constructive trust. I designated Tyler Prescott as the beneficiary. But I attached a very specific condition to the funds. To access the money, the beneficiary had to verify their identity using the tax ID associated with the account. That tax ID belonged to a phantom identity Tyler had created to defraud the state of Ohio out of $500,000 in green energy subsidies. It was a felony identity. It was on the FBI watch list. But Tyler had thought it was buried. He thought he had scrubbed it. I had found it in the deep web archives of the Ohio Department of Taxation. Now Tyler was staring at a digital bear trap. If he claimed the money, he had to input the password for that specific identity. By doing so, he would be admitting to the federal government that he was indeed the man who committed fraud in Ohio. The moment he touched that money, the IRS and the FBI would get a ping matching his current location to a fugitive warrant. He would be arrested for tax evasion and grand larceny before the transaction even cleared. But if he denied the money, if he claimed that account was not his, then he was admitting that the money had never been stolen in the first place. He would be admitting that he lied to the investors. He would be admitting that he framed me. If the money was sitting in a trust waiting for him, then Roland Mercer was innocent of embezzlement. He was damned if he took it. He was damned if he left it. "It is a honeypot," Vince said, his voice filled with a grudging respect. "The old man checkmated you. You cannot touch that cash. It is radioactive." Tyler slammed his fist onto the desk. The sound exploded in my ear. "I need that money," he screamed. "I have to pay the fixers. I have to pay the pilot. If I do not have $50,000 in cash by sunrise, I'm stuck here." "Forget the 90 grand, Vince said. "It is bait. If you touch it, you go to prison for 20 years. If you leave it, you go to prison for fraud." "You are burned, Tyler." "No," Tyler said. "No, I am not burned. I still have the girl." I opened my eyes. The girl, my daughter. "Kendra is the key," Tyler said, his voice dropping to a manic whisper. "She is the majority shareholder. If I marry her, I get access to her personal accounts, not the company accounts. Her personal trust, the money her mother left her." I gripped the bedsheet with my good hand. Viola's life insurance. The trust fund I had set up for Kendra when she was 12. It was untouchable by anyone except Kendra or her husband. Tyler was going to drain my dead wife's legacy to pay for his escape. "I have to marry her tonight," Tyler said. "Before the courts open. Before the old man can file an injunction. I marry her, I get power of attorney over her personal assets. I drain the trust, and we fly." "You are cutting it close," Vince warned. "I am all in," Tyler said. "I am burning the boats." I heard him typing again. He was not looking at the 90,000 anymore. He was logging into the K-Tech payroll system. If I cannot have the seed fund, I will take the operating capital, he muttered. He was initiating a mass transfer. He was emptying the accounts used to pay the developers the rent, the servers. He was taking the salaries of 50 employees. He was gutting the company to fund his flight. It was a suicide pill for K-Tech. By tomorrow morning, the checks would bounce. The company would be insolvent. Kendra's reputation would be destroyed. She would be liable for wage theft. He clicked enter. I heard the chime of a successful transfer. Done, he said. I just transferred 300,000 from payroll to a crypto wallet. It is irreversible. He stood up. I could hear the chair scrape against the floor. Now I am going to the hospital, he said. I am going to get my bride. We are going to have a beautiful wedding. And then I am going to vanish. He hung up the phone. I sat up in bed, ignoring the screaming pain in my ribs. I ripped the IV out of my arm. Blood trickled down my wrist, but I did not care. He had just crossed the final line. He had stolen the livelihood of 50 families. He had stolen my daughter's future. And now he was going back to finish her off. I looked at the clock. It was 7 p.m. The sun was setting over Chicago. Tyler thought he was playing poker. He thought he had gone all in, but he did not know that I had stacked the deck. I stood up, swaying slightly. I grabbed my jacket. I had to get to the hospital. I had to get into that room. The restraining order was still in effect. The police were still watching for me. Tyler had hired private security to guard the floor. It was impossible. But I was Roland Mercer. I had audited the books of the Medellin cartel. I had traced assets for the CIA. I did not do impossible. I did necessary. I walked out of the hospital room. I was not going to the lobby. I was heading for the basement. Sarah was waiting for me near the loading dock. She had a bag. Inside was a janitor's uniform, a mop bucket, and a key card. "You look terrible, Mr. Mercer," she said, her eyes wide as she saw my cast and my pale face. "I feel terrible," I admitted, "but I have a wedding to attend." I put on the gray jumpsuit over my hospital gown. It was tight across my chest, and the sleeve had to be cut to fit over my cast. I looked like a man who had been in a bar fight and lost. But I had the key card, and I had the recorder. Tyler Prescott was about to find out that the most dangerous thing in the world is not a man with a gun. It is a man with the truth and a microphone. I limped toward the service elevator. The final act was beginning, and I was going to make sure the whole world heard the ending. The hallway of the 4th floor smelled of lilies and fear. I pushed the mop bucket aside, the plastic wheels squeaking against the linoleum, a ridiculous sound in the middle of a tragedy. I abandoned the janitor disguise, ripping the gray cap off my head as I ran. My broken arm throbbed in its cast, a heavy pendulum of pain swinging at my side, but I didn't feel it. I only felt the terror of what was happening behind the closed door of room 402. I had played the recording. I had turned the hospital into a witness box. But I had underestimated Tyler Prescott's desperation. I thought he would run. I thought he would scatter like a cockroach when the light turned on. I forgot that he was not just a thief. He was a man who had already tried to kill my daughter once with pills. Now he had a gun. I burst through the double doors of the recovery suite. The room was frozen in a tableau of violence. The priest was cowering in the corner, clutching a rosary, his face the color of ash. Sarah, brave. Sarah was pressed against the wall, her hands raised, terror wide in her eyes, and in the center of the room, amidst the crushed flowers and the torn pieces of the marriage license, was Tyler. He had one arm wrapped around Kendra's neck, pulling her tight against his chest. She was still sitting in the wheelchair, her body limp, but her eyes wide and aware. The white wedding dress was bunched up around her, a grotesque mockery of purity. In his other hand, Tyler held the gun. It was pressed against Kendra's temple. I stopped. I couldn't breathe. The air left the room. "Stay back!" Tyler screamed. His voice was cracked, high-pitched, the smooth baritone of the con artist replaced by the shrill panic of a trapped rat. "Stay back or I'll blow her brains out." I raised my good hand slowly, showing him my palm. I tried to make myself look smaller, less threatening. I was just an old man, just a father. "Tyler," I said, my voice steady, though my insides were turning to water. Look at me, son, it's over. The police are downstairs. The whole hospital heard the tape. There's no way out." Tyler's eyes darted around the room, wild and bloodshot. He looked at the door behind me, then back at me. He tightened his grip on Kendra. She gagged, clawing feebly at his arm. "You did this. Tyler spat sweat dripping down his forehead. You ruined everything, old man. I had it. I had the company. I had the money. We were going to be happy. She was going to be happy. She was going to be dead, I said softly. You said it yourself. You were going to pull the plug. Shut up, Tyler roared. He pressed the gun harder into Kendra's skin. That was just talk. I loved her. I did this for us. Kendra made a low, keening wail. She looked at me. Her eyes were clearing the antidote, washing away the fog of the devil's breath. She saw me. She saw the cast on my arm. She saw the janitor's jumpsuit, and she saw the gun at her head. Dad, she whispered. It was the first time she had called me that in days. Dad, I'm sorry. Don't speak, Tyler hissed at her. Don't you dare speak to him. I took a step forward, just one step. Don't, Tyler shouted. He shifted the gun, pointing it at me for a split second before snapping it back to Kendra's head. I swear to God, Roland, I will kill her. I have nothing left to lose. You took it all. I have money, I said quickly. The lie formed on my tongue, desperate and necessary. I have money, Tyler. More than the 90,000, more than the company. Tyler laughed, a jagged, manic sound. You're broke. You live in a motel. You're a failure. I'm a forensic accountant, I said, locking eyes with him. I didn't just audit cartels, Tyler. I skimmed. I have a cold storage wallet, crypto, $2 million, untraceable. Tyler blinked. The greed flickered in his eyes, warring with the panic. It was the only lever I had, his avarice. $2 million, he whispered. It's yours, I said. I'll give you the key. I'll give you the passcodes. You can walk out of here. You can disappear. Just let her go. Tyler looked at me, calculating. He was a gambler who had lost his stack, and I was offering him a chip to get back in the game. Show me, he said. Show me the wallet. It's in my phone, I said, reaching slowly for my pocket. Slowly, he screamed. I pulled out my burner phone. It wasn't a crypto wallet. It was a cheap piece of plastic. But Tyler didn't know that. He saw what he wanted to see. I need to type in the code to unlock the transfer, I said. But I can't do it from here. My hand is broken. You have to come closer. You have to see it. Tyler hesitated. He looked at the door. He looked at Kendra. If you're lying, he threatened. I'm not lying, I said. I just want my daughter. He started to move. He dragged the wheelchair with him, using Kendra as a shield, the gun never wavering from her head. He inched toward me. Slide the phone over, he commanded. I slid the phone across the linoleum floor. It stopped at his feet. Tyler looked down. For 1 second, his eyes left me. For 1 second, his greed overpowered his survival instinct. That was the second Kendra needed. She wasn't fully recovered. Her muscles were still weak from the drugs. But she was my daughter. She had my stubbornness. She had my rage. She slammed her elbow backward into Tyler's groin. It wasn't a strong blow, but it was unexpected. Tyler grunted, doubling over slightly. The gun wavered. Now, I screamed. I didn't have a weapon. I didn't have a plan B. I just had the momentum of a father's love. I threw myself at him. I tackled Tyler, my shoulder slamming into his chest. We crashed to the floor. The wheelchair tipped over, dumping Kendra onto the ground. She scrambled away, crawling toward Sarah. The gun skittered across the floor. Tyler roared and punched me in the face. His fist connected with my jaw, snapping my head back. Stars exploded in my vision. He was younger, stronger, and desperate. He scrambled on top of me, his hands going for my throat. Die, you old fool, he screamed, squeezing. I couldn't breathe. My vision tunneled. I clawed at his face with my good hand, but his grip was iron. Dad! Kendra screamed. I saw Tyler reach out. His hand found the gun. He raised it. He pointed it at my face. Goodbye, Roland, he whispered. Bang! The sound was deafening in the small room. I flinched, waiting for the darkness. But the bullet didn't hit me. Tyler jerked. His eyes went wide. The gun fell from his hand. He looked at his shoulder. A red blossom was blooming on his white shirt. He collapsed on top of me, a dead weight. I pushed him off, gasping for air. I looked toward the door. Standing there, framed in the doorway, was Agent Miller. He held a service pistol in a two-handed grip, smoke curling from the barrel. Behind him were a dozen FBI agents in tactical gear. Federal agents, Miller shouted. Nobody move. He walked over to Tyler, kicked the gun away, and checked his pulse. "He's alive," Miller said into his radio. "Suspect is down. Need a medic." I sat up coughing. I looked across the room. Sarah was holding Kendra. My daughter was crying. Her makeup smeared, her wedding dress ruined, but she was alive. She was awake. She looked at me. She saw the bruises on my face. She saw the cast on my arm. She saw the old man who had walked through fire for her. "Dad," she sobbed. I crawled over to her. I wrapped my good arm around her. I held her tight, burying my face in her hair. "I've got you," I whispered. "I've got you, baby. It's over." Kendra clung to me, weeping. "I'm so sorry. I didn't know. He tricked me. I'm so sorry." "It's okay," I said, rocking her. "It's okay. We just have to balance the books now." I looked up at Agent Miller. He holstered his gun and nodded at me. "Nice timing, Roland," he said. "I try," I rasped. They took Tyler away on a stretcher, handcuffed to the rails. He was screaming about his rights, about his lawyers, about the money, but nobody was listening. The spell was broken. As the paramedics checked me over, I looked at the ruined wedding decorations. The lilies were trampled. The white runner was stained with blood. It was a disaster scene. But to me, it looked like a victory. I had my daughter back. The con man was in chains, and the truth, loud and undeniable, had finally been spoken. But as I sat there, the adrenaline fading and the pain returning, I knew the war wasn't quite over. Tyler had signed the contract to sell the company before the wedding. The ink was dry. The buyers were expecting their asset. I looked at Kendra. She was safe, but she was about to lose everything she had built. Unless I had one more trick up my sleeve, one more clause, one more line item in the ledger that Tyler had missed. I stood up, wincing. "Where are you going?" Kendra asked, grabbing my hand. "To court," I said. "We have a company to save." The bullet had torn through the meat of Tyler Prescott's shoulder, but it had not stopped him. The shock had knocked him down for a second, but adrenaline was a powerful drug. Before Agent Miller could close the distance, Tyler scrambled backward, dragging Kendra with him. He jammed the barrel of the gun under her chin, using her body as a shield against the wall of FBI agents. Blood bloomed dark and wet on his white shirt, spreading fast, but his grip did not loosen. "Back off," he screamed, his voice shredding the air. "Back off or I paint the walls with her." The room froze. Agent Miller held his position, his service weapon leveled, but he could not take the shot. Tyler was too close to her. He was tucked tight behind the wheelchair, his head low, his body protected by my daughter's fragile frame. The dozen tactical agents behind Miller held their fire, the red laser dots of their sights dancing frantically on Tyler's shoulder and Kendra's wedding dress. "I want a path," Tyler yelled. "I want a path to the roof, and I want that chopper here in 5 minutes. If I see anyone move toward me, she dies." He was manic. His eyes were wide and rolling, showing the whites. He was bleeding out, and he knew his time was running out. A desperate man is a dangerous man, but a desperate narcissist is a bomb waiting to detonate. Kendra was sobbing quietly. Her eyes were terrified, pleading with me. She looked at the gun pressed into the soft skin of her neck. She looked at the blood dripping from Tyler onto her dress. "Dad," she whispered. "Do not talk to him," Tyler shrieked. He shook her violently. I stood up. My legs were shaking. My broken arm was a heavy, throbbing weight in the plaster cast, but my mind was cold. I looked at the agents. They were trained for this, but they were bound by protocol. They could not risk the hostage. I was not bound by protocol. I was bound by love. I took a step forward. "Mr. Mercer, stay back," Agent Miller warned, his voice low and tight. I ignored him. I walked until I was 10 feet away from Tyler. I looked him in the eye. I saw the fear there, but I also saw the greed that had driven him to steal $90,000, the greed that had driven him to drug a woman, the greed that was his fatal flaw. "Tyler," I said, my voice calm and flat, "you are bleeding. You are surrounded. You are not going to make it out of here with her. She is dead weight. She cannot walk. She is slowing you down." "Shut up, old man," Tyler spat. "She is my insurance." "She is your anchor," I corrected him. "You drag her to the roof, you are going to get shot before you make it to the stairs." The sniper teams are already setting up on the adjacent buildings. They are waiting for 1 clear inch of your head. Tyler flinched, looking toward the windows. He knew I was right. "I have a better offer," I said. I raised my good hand slowly, showing him I was unarmed. I pointed to my head. "The money," I said. "The $2 million. The crypto wallet." Tyler narrowed his eyes. "You said it was on the phone. I lied, I said. The phone is just a key. The passphrase is in my head. It is a 24-character alphanumeric code. You cannot brute force it. You cannot hack it. And if you kill me or if you leave here without me, that money is gone forever. It is burned. I took another step closer. The FBI agents tensed, but nobody moved. They realized what I was doing. You want to leave the country, Tyler, I said. You want to go to a place with no extradition treaty. You need resources for that. You need capital. $10,000 in your pocket gets you a bus ticket. $2 million gets you a new face and a new life. Tyler licked his lips. He was calculating. He was looking at Kendra, who was sagging in his grip, a liability. Then he looked at me. An old man with a broken arm, a man he could easily overpower, a man who held the keys to his freedom. Trade, I said. Let her go. Take me. No, Dad. Kendra cried, her voice cracking. No, do not do it. Quiet, Tyler snapped at her. He looked at me. His eyes were darting between the door and my face. You walk me to the roof, he said. You get me on the chopper. You give me the code. Then I let you go. No, I said firmly. You let her go now. You take me as the hostage. I am the high-value asset, Tyler, not her. You take me, and the FBI holds their fire because they want the money recovered. You take her, and they take the shot the moment you step into the hallway. It was a gamble. I was betting on his greed overpowering his logic. I was betting that the promise of $2 million was louder than the siren song of survival. Tyler hesitated. He looked at the gun. He looked at the blood on his shoulder. Walk over here, he commanded, slowly. I walked. Every step was a mile. I could feel the heat of the laser sights on my back. I could smell the metallic tang of blood and sweat coming from Tyler. I stopped arm length away. Let her go, I said. Tyler shoved the wheelchair violently. It spun away, crashing into the wall near Sarah. Kendra tumbled out, grasping for the nurse. Tyler grabbed me. He did not grab my good arm. He grabbed my left arm, the broken one. His fingers dug into the space where the cast ended and the swollen flesh began. He yanked me against him, spinning me around so my back was to his chest. He jammed the gun into my spine right between the vertebrae. A scream of agony tore from my throat. White light exploded behind my eyes. The pain in my arm was absolute. It felt like he was grinding the shattered bones together. Smart move, Roland Tyler hissed in my ear, his breath hot and wet. Now you are my insurance. He looked at the agents. Back off, he screamed. Anyone follows us and I put a bullet in his spine, I will paralyze him. He began to drag me backward toward the door. I stumbled, my feet tangling. He was strong even with a bullet in him. He hauled me like a sack of grain. We moved into the hallway. The hospital was in lockdown. The corridors were empty, lined with abandoned carts and medical equipment. The lights were humming. To the service elevator, Tyler ordered, shoving me toward the heavy steel doors at the end of the hall. Move, old man. Move. He pressed the call button with his elbow, keeping the gun digging into my back. We waited. The seconds ticked by like hours. I looked down the hall. Agent Miller and his team were advancing, moving in a tactical formation, staying low, using the walls for cover. They were tracking us, but they were keeping their distance. The elevator dinged. The doors slid open. It was empty. Tyler shoved me inside and hit the button for the roof. The doors closed, sealing us in a steel box. As the elevator began to rise, Tyler slumped against the wall for a second, gasping for air. His face was pale, his skin clammy. He was losing blood fast. Give me the code, he wheezed, pointing the gun at my face. Give it to me now. Not yet, I said, leaning against the rail, clutching my broken arm. Not until we are in the air. He stepped forward and backhanded me across the face with the pistol. The metal cut my cheek. My head snapped back. Do not play games with me, Roland, he snarled. I will shoot you in the knee. I will drag you on board. You shoot me, and I pass out, I said, spitting blood onto the floor. I pass out, and you get no code. You get nothing. You die broke in a prison cell. He stared at me, hate burning in his eyes, but he lowered the gun slightly. He knew I was right. He needed me conscious. The elevator jolted to a stop. The doors opened to the roof. The wind hit us first. It was a howling gale carrying the freezing rain of the Chicago night. The roof was dark, illuminated only by the red obstruction lights on the radio tower. And there it was. A black helicopter sat on the helipad, its rotors already spinning, whipping the air into a frenzy. Tyler had planned this. He had a pilot on standby, paid for with the money he stole from the payroll accounts. Let's go, Tyler shouted over the noise of the engine. He grabbed my broken arm again, twisting it viciously. I cried out, stumbling forward into the rain. We walked across the slick surface of the roof. The city lay spread out below us, a grid of lights indifferent to the struggle playing out above. I looked at the helicopter. The pilot was wearing a helmet, his face obscured. The side door was open, waiting. This was it. This was the end of the line. If I got on that chopper, I was dead. Tyler would get the code or realize I was lying, and then he would push me out over Lake Michigan. I had to end it here. We reached the helicopter. The wash from the rotors was deafening. Tyler pushed me toward the open door. "Get in!" he screamed. I grabbed the handle of the door. I put one foot on the skid. Tyler climbed up behind me, his gun pressed into my kidney. "Go!" he yelled at the pilot. "Go now!" The helicopter engine whined. The skids lifted an inch off the ground. I looked at Tyler. He was looking at the horizon, his eyes filled with the desperate hope of escape. He thought he had won. He thought he was seconds away from freedom. I leaned close to him, shouting to be heard over the rotors. "I have to enter the code," I yelled, holding up my phone. "It needs a biometric confirmation." Tyler looked at me. He nodded frantically. "Do it. Do it now." I held the phone up. I opened the terminal app. I typed in a string of numbers. It was not a wallet password. It was an execution command. It was the trigger for the wipeout virus I had embedded in the decoy files on his laptop, the ones linked to his cloud accounts. But Tyler did not know that. He watched the screen, hungry for the numbers. I hit enter. A green bar flashed on the screen. "Upload complete." "There," I yelled. "It is done." Tyler grabbed the phone from my hand. He looked at it, expecting to see a balance, expecting to see $2 million. Instead, he saw a message box pop up. It was a simple text notification generated by the script I had written. The message read, "Location shared with FBI server. Assets frozen. Evidence uploaded." Tyler stared at the screen. The blood drained from his face, leaving him looking like a ghost. He looked at me. The realization hit him like a physical blow. There was no money. There was no escape. I had not given him a fortune. I had given him a confession. "You son of a bitch," he screamed. He raised the gun. He aimed it directly at my chest. His finger tightened on the trigger. There was no hesitation this time, no greed to hold him back, only pure, unadulterated hate. I braced myself for the bullet. I had played my last card. I had saved my daughter. I had exposed the fraud. It was a good trade. But the shot never came. A crack echoed across the roof, sharper than the thunder. Tyler's head snapped back. A red mist sprayed into the air, mixing with the rain. He crumpled. He fell backward out of the helicopter door, tumbling onto the wet concrete of the helipad. I looked out into the darkness. On the roof of the adjacent building, 300 yards away, I saw a shadow, a figure lying prone, a sniper rifle. Agent Miller had not just let us walk out. He had repositioned. He had waited for the clear shot. He had waited until I was clear of the line of fire. The helicopter pilot, seeing his payload dead on the ground, panicked. He yanked the collective. The chopper lurched upward, banking hard away from the roof, disappearing into the storm clouds. I stood alone on the helipad. The rain washed the blood from my face. I looked down at Tyler. He was lying on his back, his eyes open, staring up at the sky he would never reach. I sat down on the edge of the helicopter skid, which was still resting on the concrete. My legs gave out. The adrenaline crashed, leaving me shaking and cold. I took a deep breath. The air tasted of ozone and jet fuel. It was over, or so I thought. I looked at my phone, which Tyler had dropped. It was buzzing. A notification from the legal alert system I had set up. It was a court filing. Even as Tyler lay dead, the machinery he had set in motion was still grinding forward. The contract he had forced Kendra to sign in the hospital room, the sale of K-Tech, had been time-stamped and filed with the state registry 5 minutes before we went to the roof. Legally, the company was gone. The Vulture Fund owned it. I closed my eyes. I had won the battle. I had saved her life. But the war for her legacy was just beginning. I heard the door to the roof burst open. Agent Miller and a team of medics ran toward me. I held up my good hand. "I am okay," I said. I looked at the city lights one last time. "Rest in peace, Tyler," I whispered. "But do not get comfortable. I still have to undo what you did. And I am going to need your signature one last time." The wind from the rotor blades whipped through the open door of the helicopter, stinging my eyes with freezing rain. We were hovering 5 feet off the roof of the hospital, the skids swaying in the turbulence. Tyler Prescott had dragged me inside the cabin, his grip on my broken arm sending waves of nausea rolling through my gut. He threw me into the leather seat and jammed the barrel of his gun against my temple. The pilot, a mercenary whose face was hidden behind a black visor, looked back at us, waiting for the signal to bank away toward the lake and disappear into the heavy cloud cover. Tyler was frantic. He was bleeding from the shoulder where the first graze had hit him, but the adrenaline was keeping him upright. He shoved a ruggedized laptop onto my lap. It was open to a secure terminal window, the cursor blinking like a heartbeat. "Put it in," he screamed over the roar of the engine. "Put in the seed key. I want to see the balance confirmed before we leave this airspace." I looked at the screen. This was the moment. The laptop was connected to the helicopter's satellite uplink. It was the only way Tyler could access his offshore accounts from the air. He thought I was about to type in the 24-character private key to a cold storage wallet containing $2 million. He thought he was seconds away from freedom. He thought he had won. I raised my good hand. My fingers were shaking not from the cold, but from the sheer weight of what I was about to do. I looked at Tyler. His eyes were wide, manic, fixated on the keyboard. He was licking his lips like a starving dog. He did not see me. He only saw the numbers. "I am typing it." I shouted, my voice lost in the mechanical shriek of the turbine. I positioned my fingers. I did not type a wallet key. I typed a command line execution code. It was a script I had written 3 months ago when I first suspected Tyler was compromising my home network. I had buried it deep in the root directory of the cloud server he was using to store his stolen data. It was a dormant virus, a digital claymore mine, and the trigger code was the only thing standing between Tyler Prescott and total annihilation. I typed the first sequence. Alpha, 7, Tango. "Faster," Tyler yelled, prodding me with the gun. I typed the second sequence. The laptop screen flickered. A command prompt opened, overlaying the banking interface. "What is that?" Tyler shouted, leaning in, his breath smelling of copper and mint. "What is that window?" "It is the encryption protocol," I lied, my voice steady. "It has to decrypt the wallet." I hit the final key. Enter. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. The cursor blinked. The helicopter lurched as a gust of wind hit the tail boom. Then the screen turned a bright, violent red. It was not a red of error. It was the red of a system purge. Lines of code began to scroll down the screen faster than the eye could follow. It was a waterfall of data. "What is happening?" Tyler screamed, grabbing my collar. "What did you do?" I sat back against the seat, holding my broken arm. I looked him in the eye. I balanced the books. "Tyler." The screen flashed a message in bold white letters. "Wipeout protocol initiated. Uploading to secure server." "Upload," Tyler shrieked. "Upload to where?" "To the Federal Bureau of Investigation," I said. He looked at the screen again. A progress bar appeared. It was moving terrifyingly fast, fed by the high-speed satellite connection he had paid for with stolen money. Files were listing as they transferred. The Black Ledger, the list of shell companies in the Caymans, the real names of the investors he had defrauded, the video files of him blackmailing city officials, the toxicology reports he had tried to delete. The entire architecture of his criminal empire was being siphoned out of his control and dumped directly onto the servers of the Cyber Crimes Division in Washington, D.C. "Stop it!" Tyler roared. He smashed his hand against the keyboard, trying to break the connection. "You cannot stop it!" I said, raising my voice over the engine. "It is a worm. It replicates. If you shut down the laptop, it just moves to the cloud backup. If you kill the cloud, it moves to the mirrors. It is everywhere, Tyler." The progress bar hit 100%. A new message popped up. "Transfer complete. 10 gigabytes sent. Local drives wiped." The screen went black. Then a single line of text appeared. "Game over." Tyler stared at the black screen. His mouth hung open. The gun in his hand lowered slightly, forgotten in the face of this absolute catastrophe. He had not just lost the money. He had lost his anonymity. He had lost his leverage. Every secret he had ever kept, every crime he had ever committed was now in the hands of the people who wanted to put him in a cage for the rest of his life. He looked at me. The shock in his eyes curdled into a madness that was terrifying to behold. He realized there was no escape. There was no island in the sun. There was only a concrete cell. "You ruined me," he whispered. "I did not ruin you," I said, feeling a strange calm settle over me. "I just exposed you. You ruined yourself the day you decided my daughter was a mark instead of a person." Tyler let out a guttural scream, a sound of pure animal rage. He raised the gun. He pointed it directly at my chest. His hand was shaking, but at this range he could not miss. "I am going to kill you," he screamed. "I am going to kill you, and then I am going to drop your body on your daughter's house." I looked down the barrel of the gun. I saw the rifling. I saw the darkness. I did not close my eyes. I wanted him to see that I was not afraid. I wanted him to know that even if he pulled the trigger, he had already lost. "Do it," I said. "Add murder to the indictment. It does not change the math." His finger tightened on the trigger. I saw the hammer start to pull back. The pilot suddenly shouted something unintelligible and banked the helicopter hard to the right. The sudden motion threw Tyler off balance. He stumbled against the door frame. That was the moment the universe corrected itself. There was a sound like a whip crack, loud and sharp, cutting through the noise of the rotors. Tyler jerked violently as if he had been kicked by a mule. A puff of red mist exploded from his right shoulder, shattering the clavicle and spinning him around. He dropped the gun. It skittered across the metal floor of the helicopter and fell out into the night. Tyler crumpled to the floor of the cabin, grasping his shoulder, screaming in agony. I looked out the open door. Across the gap between the buildings on the roof of the adjacent parking structure, I saw a muzzle flash. A second later, another crack echoed. The second shot hit the engine block of the helicopter. Sparks showered down. The turbine whined a high-pitched scream of mechanical failure. The pilot panicked. "We are going down," he shouted. He dropped the collective, slamming the helicopter back down onto the hospital roof with a bone-jarring crash. The skids buckled. The rotors clipped a ventilation unit, sending shrapnel flying. The helicopter spun once and came to a rest, smoke pouring from the engine. I was thrown against the bulkhead, my broken arm screaming in protest, but I was alive. I looked at Tyler. He was lying in a pool of his own blood, his face pale, his eyes wide with shock. He was trying to crawl toward the open door, trying to get away, but his body would not obey him. The door to the roof burst open. Agent Miller led the charge, his team flowing out like water, moving with precision. They swarmed the helicopter. Federal agents, Miller shouted, "Show me your hands." They dragged the pilot out first, throwing him to the ground and cuffing him. Then they came for Tyler. 2 agents grabbed him by his good arm and his legs. They hauled him out of the wreckage and slammed him face down onto the wet gravel of the roof. "Do not kill me." Tyler sobbed, his bravado gone, replaced by the pathetic whimpering of a bully who has finally met someone stronger. "I surrender. Please do not shoot." Agent Miller knelt on Tyler's back, snapping the handcuffs on tight. "Tyler Prescott, you are under arrest," Miller said, his voice grim. "You have the right to remain silent, and I highly suggest you use it." I climbed out of the helicopter, slowly using my good arm to steady myself. The rain was washing the blood off the roof. Agent Miller looked at me. He nodded. "We got the data, Roland," he said. "The Bureau just confirmed the packet receipt. It is everything. We have him on RICO charges, fraud, kidnapping, and attempted murder. He is never seeing the light of day again." I walked over to where Tyler lay, pinned to the ground. He looked up at me, mud and blood on his face. "Why," he whispered, "why did you do this? You could have just paid me." I looked down at him. I looked at the man who had tried to destroy my family. "Because, Tyler," I said, my voice raspy but clear, "you forgot the first rule of accounting." He blinked, tears mixing with the rain on his face. "What rule?" he asked. "Every debit must have a credit," I said, "and your bill just came due." I turned my back on him. The paramedics were rushing onto the roof, heading toward me. I let them guide me away. I was tired. I was hurt. But as I walked toward the door leading down to my daughter, I felt lighter than I had in years. The ledger was balanced, the audit was closed, and the bad guy was in chains. It was a good day's work. The heavy oak doors of the federal courthouse closed behind me, shutting out the media circus that had camped on the steps. Inside, the air was cool and smelled of furniture polish and old paper. I adjusted the sling on my arm. My cast was still fresh, a stark white against my dark suit, but I wore it like a badge of honor. Tyler Prescott was in a holding cell facing a list of charges long enough to keep him buried for 3 lifetimes, but the damage he had done was not easily undone. He was a human wrecking ball, and while we had stopped the swing, the building was still crumbling. I sat next to Kendra at the plaintiff's table. She looked better than she had at the hospital, but she was still pale, her eyes haunted by the chemical fog she had lived in for weeks. She gripped her hands together so tightly her knuckles were white. Across the aisle sat the legal team for Obsidian Holdings, the shell company Tyler had set up to buy K-Tech. They were not phantom lawyers. They were very real, very expensive corporate litigators, and they were suing for breach of contract. They claimed the sale document Kendra had signed in the hospital room was valid. They claimed they owned the intellectual property. They claimed my daughter was a competent adult who had made a business decision and now had seller's remorse. The judge was a stern woman with reading glasses perched on the end of her nose. She looked at the motion to dismiss we had filed, and then she looked at the contract. Miss Mercer signed this document. The opposing counsel argued, his voice booming in the quiet room. The signature is verified. The notary stamp is present. We have a valid transfer of assets. The fact that her father later regretted the deal is irrelevant. A contract is a contract. My lawyer stood up. Your Honor, Ms. Mercer was under the influence of powerful sedatives administered without her consent. She lacked the capacity to contract. Prove it. The opposing counsel sneered. Do you have a doctor who evaluated her at the exact moment of signing? Do you have a psychiatric evaluation from that hour? I felt Kendra tremble beside me. They were going to take it. They were going to take the company she built from nothing because Tyler had been smart enough to get a signature before the police kicked down the door. I leaned over to my lawyer. Put me on the stand, I whispered. He looked at me. Roland, we are arguing capacity. You are an accountant, not a doctor. Just put me on the stand, I said. I do not need to be a doctor to prove she was not there. I walked to the witness box. I swore to tell the truth. I sat down and looked at the jury. I did not see strangers. I saw an audit committee, and I was about to present the findings. Mr. Mercer, the opposing counsel began. You claim your daughter was incapacitated, but you were not in the room when she signed. Were you? I was listening, I said. Listening is not seeing, he countered. You cannot know her mental state. I reached into my briefcase with my good hand. I pulled out a thick bound ledger. It was not the black ledger. It was something new. I am a forensic accountant, I said, my voice filling the room. My job is to reconstruct reality using data points. When you look at a bank statement, you see numbers. When I look at it, I see behavior. I see intent. I see state of mind. I open the book. This is a forensic audit of Kendra Mercer's life for the last 6 months, I said. I turned the book toward the jury. It was filled with graphs, charts, and timelines. Exhibit A, I said, pointing to a graph that showed a sharp decline. This is her credit card activity. For 5 years, Kendra checked her balances daily. She paid off her cards every Friday at 5 p.m. It was a ritual. Starting 3 months ago, that stopped. Late fees accrued. Interest piled up. That is not a change in habit. That is a cognitive failure. I turned the page. Exhibit B, email syntax analysis. I ran her outgoing communications through a linguistic algorithm. Her vocabulary dropped by 40% in the last 6 weeks. Her sentence structure simplified. She stopped using the technical jargon she invented for her own software. The woman who wrote the code for K-Tech could barely write a grocery list. The opposing lawyer stood up. Objection. The witness is speculating. I am not speculating, I snapped. I am quantifying. Data does not lie. I turned to the final page. It was a timeline overlaying her digital footprint with the toxicology report Sarah had stolen. Exhibit C, I said. The chemical correlation. Every time Tyler purchased a refill of his prescription sedatives, Kendra's login times on her work server dropped to 0 for 12 hours. The correlation is 0.99. That is not a coincidence. That is cause and effect. At the time this contract was signed, Kendra had not logged into her own system for 48 hours. She had not checked her email. She had not answered a text. She was a ghost in her own life. A ghost cannot sign a contract. The courtroom was silent. The jury was leaning forward, looking at the charts. I had translated her pain into the only language the law understood. Evidence. The judge looked at the opposing counsel. Do you have a rebuttal? The lawyer straightened his tie. He looked nervous, but he was not done. Even if she was impaired, he said, grasping at straws, the contract was countersigned by a witness. It was notarized. The procedure was followed. The document stands on its own. I smiled. It was the smile of a man who has found the one decimal point that crashes the whole spreadsheet. I was hoping you would say that, I said. I looked at the judge. Your Honor, may I see the original contract? The bailiff handed me the document. I looked at the signature block. Kendra Mercer, and below it the witness and broker for the deal, Tyler Prescott. I looked at the opposing lawyer. You are right, I said. A contract requires two valid parties, a buyer and a seller, and a witness to verify the intent. I pointed to Tyler's signature. "Who is this?" I asked. The lawyer sighed. "That is Mr. Prescott, the broker." "No," I said. "That is the problem. There is no Mr. Prescott." I pulled a single sheet of paper from my pocket. It was a birth certificate, a death certificate, and a social security trace. "Tyler Prescott died in 1998, I said. "He was 6 years old. He died in a car accident in Dayton, Ohio." The room gasped. Kendra looked up, her eyes wide. "The man sitting in jail right now," I continued, "is not Tyler Prescott. His real name is Arthur Vane. He has been using the identity of a dead child for 10 years to conduct business. He has credit cards in that name. He has a driver's license in that name. And he signed this contract in that name." I looked at the judge. "Fraud in the factum, Your Honor. If a party to a contract uses a false identity to execute the agreement, the contract is not voidable. It is void ab initio. It never existed. You cannot make a deal with a ghost." The judge looked at the birth certificate. She looked at the death certificate. She looked at the contract. She slammed her gavel down. The sound was like a gunshot. "The contract is null and void," the judge declared. "The sale is vacated. The assets remain the property of Kendra Mercer. Case dismissed with prejudice." The opposing lawyer slumped in his chair. He started packing his briefcase, knowing he had been beaten by a man who did checks and balances for a living. Kendra burst into tears. She hugged me, burying her face in my shoulder. "We did it, Dad," she sobbed. "We saved it." I held her tight, ignoring the pain in my arm. "We did, baby." We balanced the books. We walked out of the courthouse into the bright afternoon sun. The reporters were shouting questions, but I did not hear them. I just felt the warmth of the sun on my face and the weight of my daughter on my arm. But there was one last thing to do, one last loose end to tie up. We got in the car. "Where are we going?" Kendra asked, wiping her eyes. "To the office," I said. "We have a company to run, and I have a resignation letter to write." Kendra looked at me confused. "Resignation? From what?" "From being a ghost," I said. I was done hiding. I was done being the quiet bookkeeper. Roland Mercer was back, and the world was going to know exactly who I was. The sentencing hearing was not a spectacle, it was a funeral for a false identity. Tyler Prescott, or Arthur Vane as the court record now stated, stood before the bench in an orange jumpsuit that hung loosely on his frame. The bullet wound in his shoulder had healed, but his arrogance had not survived the infection of truth. He refused to look at the gallery. He refused to look at the three women sitting in the front row holding hands. Monica, Sarah, and Liz were there not to gloat, but to witness the end of a nightmare. I sat in the back row, my arm still in a sling, watching the final entry being logged in the ledger of justice. The federal judge, a man with a reputation for despising white-collar criminals, read the verdict with the monotone precision of a metronome. For the charges of wire fraud, aggravated identity theft, kidnapping, assault with a deadly weapon, and racketeering, the court sentenced Arthur Vane to 30 years in a federal penitentiary without the possibility of parole for at least 25. The courtroom did not erupt in cheers. There was just a collective exhale, a release of breath that had been held for years. Tyler did not scream. He did not cry. He simply slumped forward, the weight of his own choices finally crushing him. As the marshals led him away, the chains on his ankles rattled a cold metallic sound that signaled the closing of the account. But prison was only half the equation. The other half was restitution. The data dump from the wipeout virus had not just exposed Tyler's crimes, it had exposed his assets. The FBI forensic team working with the roadmap I provided had located the hidden servers in Estonia and the crypto wallets that Tyler thought were untouchable. They seized everything. It was not enough to pay back every dollar he had ever stolen, but it was significant. I watched from the hallway as the victim's advocate handed checks to the women. Monica looked at the piece of paper and covered her mouth, sobbing quietly. It was enough to pay off the debts Tyler had left her with, enough to save her home. Sarah hugged Liz, tears streaming down her face. They were not rich, but they were free. They were solvent. The red ink had been washed away. I did not ask for restitution. I did not need the money. My payment was standing there watching the color return to their faces. My payment was knowing that the predator was in a cage and the flock was safe. I walked out of the courthouse into the Chicago wind, feeling the cold bite of the air on my face. The system worked, but only because I had forced it to work. I had lubricated the gears with evidence and pushed the levers with sheer will. Justice is not a natural phenomenon, it is an engineered product, and I was the engineer. Later that evening, I found Kendra sitting on the porch of the house I had bought for her, the house Tyler had tried to steal. The sunset was painting the sky in bruised shades of purple and orange. She was staring at the garden, her hands resting in her lap. She looked older than she had a month ago. The baby fat of naivety had burned away, leaving the sharp cheekbones of a survivor. She saw me approach and she stood up quickly, wiping her eyes. She did not say a word. She just walked down the steps and knelt on the concrete of the driveway. She lowered her head until her forehead touched my knee. It was a gesture of total submission, of profound apology that broke my heart. "Dad," she whispered, her voice cracking. "I am so sorry. I was so stupid. I let him take everything. I let him hurt you. I threw your clothes in the dirt. I called you a thief. I do not deserve you." I reached down with my good hand and gripped her shoulder. I pulled her up. I did not want her on her knees. I wanted her on her feet. "Stand up, Kendra," I said softly. "We do not kneel, not to men like Tyler, and not to our own mistakes." She stood up, looking at me with eyes full of shame. "How did you know?" she asked. "How did you know from the beginning?" I reached into my jacket pocket. I pulled out a small leather-bound notebook. It was not the black ledger. It was new. The leather was stiff and uncracked. I pressed it into her hands. "I knew because I read the footnotes," I said. She opened the book. The pages were filled with my handwriting. It was not a diary. It was a manual. "This is how I protected you," I said. She flipped through the pages. She saw the logs of every background check I had run on her boyfriend since she was 16. She saw the audit trails of the K-Tech accounts that I had monitored weekly since the company launched. She saw the contingency plans I had drafted for bankruptcy, for hostile takeovers, for identity theft. "You were watching," she whispered. "You were always watching." "I am an accountant, Kendra," I said. "I watch the margins. I watch for the variance." When Tyler came into your life, the numbers stopped adding up. His spending did not match his income. His stories did not match the timeline. I did not need to be a psychic. I just needed to be attentive. She looked at the page dated 3 years ago. It was titled "The Golden Share Protocol." It detailed the creation of the veto stock, the stock that had saved her company. "You saved me before I even knew I was in danger," she said, tears dropping onto the paper. "I saved you because I knew the world is full of Tylers," I said. "I knew that your brilliance, your kindness made you a target. You build things, Kendra. That is your gift. My gift is building the wall around the things you create." I tapped the cover of the notebook. "Keep this book," I said. "Read it. Memorize the patterns. I will not be here forever. The next time a wolf comes knocking in a sheepskin suit, I want you to be the one who spots the zipper." She hugged the book to her chest. "I will," she promised. "I will never let the books get unbalanced again." I kissed her forehead. "Good. Now go inside. You have a company to run, and I have a bottle of bourbon that has been waiting for me." I walked into my house. It was quiet. The mess Tyler had made was gone, cleaned up by Kendra in a frenzy of penance. My chair was back in its place. My records were stacked neatly on the desk. I poured a glass of amber liquid and sat down in the old leather armchair. The leather groaned a familiar, welcoming sound. I took a sip. The burn was pleasant grounding. People say money cannot buy happiness. They say it is the root of all evil. They are wrong. Money is neutral. It is just energy stored in paper and digits. In the hands of a man like Tyler, it is a weapon of destruction. But in the hands of a man like me, it is a shield. I looked at the empty space on the wall where the safe used to be. I would have to install a new one, a better one. "Controlling the cash flow does not make you happy," I said to the empty room, raising my glass in a toast to the silence. "But it buys you the safety to pursue happiness. It buys you the leverage to protect the people you love when the law is too slow and the police are too blind. It buys you the option to say no." I took another sip. I am Roland Mercer. I am a father. I am a survivor. And as of tonight, my accounts are reconciled. My debts are paid. And my enemies are bankrupt. My ledger is balanced. And that is all the happiness I need. In the world of forensic accounting, we live by a simple maxim: trust but verify. I learned that this rule applies just as much to family as it does to finance. The hardest audit you will ever perform is on the people closest to you, but sometimes it is the most necessary. Blind trust is not a virtue, it is a vulnerability that predators like Tyler exploit. True love is not just about unconditional support. It is about having the courage to ask the difficult questions and the strength to build a fortress around those you cherish. I used to believe that keeping my wealth hidden protected my daughter, but I realized that transparency is the only currency that truly holds value. Always check the footnotes of your life, because the devil is always in the details. If you enjoyed this story of justice served cold, please like and subscribe. And tell me in the comments, have you ever had to protect a loved one from a wolf in sheep's clothing?